All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Just a reminder of how we do this. First of all, it's great to see you all. It's great to be back. I really love doing this. I really love the way this has gone the past few months that we've had this sort of program. I have a call in. I'll remind you in a bit how it goes. But first of all, if you want to call in, of course, I've just pinned the top comment. And the way you call in is it's right there in the chat. So you go to the chat, open the chat if it's not already open, and that top pinned message, the only pinned message in that chat, will have a StreamYard link. You click on the link, and that will give you access to my studio. And then you don't have to sign in. You don't have to create an account or anything like that. You just come right into my studio, camera on, mic on, and then we chat about whatever. So what would we chat about? Well, we chat about philosophy, obviously. This is a call-in show for philosophy. But I understand philosophy rather broadly speaking. I include things like, religious studies in there. Anything from ancient, medieval, modern philosophy, contemporary philosophy, Analytic and Continental. And, if you're not familiar with that, even the Analytic and Continental distinction, that's fine. This is not just for high-level conversations, although I'm happy to have those conversations if I'm able to. I don't know everything, but happy to have those conversations. But we can even have basic, introductory, beginner-level conversations, and just maybe you got a thought that you kind of want to talk through and work through. I'm happy to discuss that with you as well. As you can see, let me actually open this up. I will share screen on this tab. You have this available to you right now, but if you look right here, like I say, construe philosophy very broadly, from everything from the ancient to the present. I look at my past guests there and many, many others. Also past episode topics. Here are some of the things, if you look in the description box, you look at this, on your own, all the kind of topics that we've discussed in the past and many, many, many others. There's a lot of stuff that I just didn't even put in there because it would be just way too long of a list. And as you get down here, of course, take note that it's not a debate necessarily. Actually, not at all. It's not even not necessarily. It's not a debate. I don't do debates. I tried telling this to people all the time, and in the comments, this one guy got really upset that I don't debate, and it's like, dude, I mean, what, are you gonna make me jump through a hoop like a monkey or something? I don't debate. Like, I have great respect for people who do debates, and because I can't do that. I recognize that as a really great skill. I don't have that skill. I don't plan on anytime soon mastering that skill. So, if you want to do that, if you want to follow people who do that, by all means, happy travels, go, may the Lord be with you, go do that. But this is not a debate. What is this then? What do I mean by discussion? A discussion is where you come, just like it's titled here, office hours. You come, we talk about stuff, right? We may be able to work through arguments that you want to work through like you would hear in a debate, but I say not a debate because it's not going to be in that sort of antagonistic mode that debates unfortunately have deteriorated into. A proper debate is not antagonistic. It's not really, mudslinging, but, they deteriorate into that, especially on the internet. So I don't want that. And I also, you often hear like modern day debate scenarios. There's like a winner and a loser. That's not what's happening here. It's not that there's, I'm just going to like punch down on you and, win or something. There's no winner. There's no loser. It's just, I see us communicating, us collaboratively having a discussion because we are engaging together at cooperatively going towards the truth. So if that seems like something you're interested in, please join. And I'd love to hear what you want to talk about. Some people get on here and they don't know what they want to talk about yet. We'll get to those things. We'll work through them. And some people get on here and they have like notes, right? Like people have like a series of questions that they've written down and they want to ask. Maybe they've kind of generated these ideas and thoughts from, from comments that they've left on my channel, and they kind of want to ask me in person what my thoughts are on that. And I really appreciate that. And some people they get into like, taking lengthy notes, and I'll sometimes have them share a screen and just kind of work through like a like a handout or a note that they've kind of formed. So that's really, really helpful as well. If you have that, if you don't, that's fine too. So as a reminder, we're still waiting for our first guest. And I think in about, as always happens, in about 10, 20 minutes, there's going to be like a line of people waiting to join. But whoever wants to take that first step, happy to have you on here. Please go ahead and do that, and get in before the crowd gets in here, because we eventually will have 3 or 4 people waiting at a time. So right now there's no one waiting, and I understand, especially if it's your first time, like I said before, that if you are shy, that's fine. You can just sit and listen. Or if you just don't want to be on camera, just sit and listen. That's fine. Or if you're just here to check it out, maybe I showed up in your suggested videos on your feed, on the algorithm sent you to me. I'm happy that you're here, first of all, and yeah, happy to have anybody on here. Hey, Alex, good to see you again. I know I've had you a few times, and man, we've had some great discussions, and yeah, so good to see you again. So yeah, actually, I'm doing this on an unusual day, and that's perhaps why the regular usual crowd isn't quite all here yet. It's the same time, but an unusual day, because, as I mentioned before, I'm going to the Baltics in Europe, which is over into northeastern Europe. The Baltics are like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Right over there in Northeast Europe. I think they were former Soviet republics. And then, when the Soviet Union was going on. And then right above them is Finland, right? And you starting to get into Scandinavia. So that's why we'll be starting Wednesday. And we're going to take a red eye on Wednesday night, fly out of Dulles. And I don't know where we're going to land. I'll have to look at the itinerary. My wife loves planning these trips. So she really does all the planning. And, more power to her, because I'm not really a logistics person. I'm more of like a big ideas person, and I think about doing. I tell people this, like when I first meet people and they want to know what I do, and I do philosophy. I was like, I will always say, I don't really do things, but I think about doing things. That's a good way to like introduce people to philosophy. I don't really do anything. I think about doing stuff though. So, yeah, I do stuff. I'm a handyman, but when it comes to like actually, my career and stuff, but yeah, that I love thinking about the big ideas. I love thinking about, big ideas and things you could do. But when it comes to actually sitting down in stone, what the plans are and an itinerary, and you got to be on time, and you got to purchase tickets, and you got to flights and trains and all that. I'm just, that really bothers me. I'm not that kind of person. Yeah. So yeah, surprised I went live tonight. Yeah. I don't usually go live on Mondays. Wednesdays is my normal night. And, yeah, so, yeah, I think once the semester start, I will say this. Hey to XE Music, glad to see you here as well. I will say this, that once the semester starts, which the semester starts the week, in just a couple of weeks, the week of 25th of August. Once that starts, I will be probably starting to evolve the channel and maybe go to either twice a week. Like Wednesday would be still a good day, and perhaps maybe Monday would be the other day. So I'm thinking about doing twice a week streaming, or I might alternate between. So if I go, let me explain this real quick. So if I go twice a week, I will have a different theme for each day. I won't just do office hours, both times in the week. So that's one possibility, twice a week. Or I may just alternate between those two themes. I may do office hours one week, and then the next week, I'm thinking, you guys can tell me whether this would be something you're interested in. I'll do office hours, which is very general and very open still. And you've seen how kind of rabbit trails we follow and chase and all that. But I'm thinking the second topic might be something like, why are you atheist? Right? And just be kind of like a call-in show just like this. And having people come on. And then that way, the topic is much more focused. Like people know why they're calling in. Okay, well, I want to talk about why I'm atheist. And so that would just be a very, very focused way to like get conversation going. And during office hours, it's not like we can't have philosophy of religion topics or conversations about atheism. That's still fair game. It's just that other one would be something much more focused. So tell me how you guys think about that, if that's something you would be interested in the comments there and in the chat. So so that's all right, Alex. And I see, so you would like to join, internet's not great. Ben says he may hop on here and when he gets off work in about 15 minutes. Yeah, this is a strange time too, because if you're on the if you're on the East Coast, even it's for like 4:30, right? On a Monday, 4:42 now. But I've been told, and this is why we have such international kind of audience here. I've been told it's a really good time for the UK and Europe. Because it's like 9 p.m. for them. And I've been told it's a really good time for Australia because it's around like 9 a.m. there for them. So yeah, I look forward to you hopping on when you get off work. And if you're going to drive, please be careful because you'll have to have your video on. So good afternoon to you, Adventures in Philology. I really enjoyed your comments. It looks like you may be new to the channel, but I remember your name, of course, philology. Did you happen to know that Friedrich Nietzsche was a professor of philology? Philology is like love of languages, love of the word. And so it's very closely related to etymology, but I myself don't even know the difference between philology and etymology. But yeah, we have here whoever his name is, I'm not sure what his real name is, but it was my understanding, looking at some of your videos, that you were doing like graduate work in languages and something, and which is itself distinct from linguistics. And by the way, that reminds me, if you were still watching, this guy is the guy I was pointing out to, Eximusic, because Eximusic was telling me he does stuff in linguistics. So you guys should connect. Yeah, there will be an opening, Ben. So you have a lot of thought on free will. You have a lot of free will to have that thought on free will. Hey, Digital Gnosis, glad to see you again. You guys are welcome to come on anytime. Yeah, so, yeah, yep, true. Yeah, you should connect. I'm not sure which one you're saying true to, but maybe the connecting, maybe the fact that linguistics is distinct from etymology and philology. I think both those claims are true. So, all right, looks like we have Nathan on. Man, I love the setup. First of all, I mean, that is fire. First of all, I don't want to do like a disservice here. Look at that setup, you guys. That's beautiful.
You got lights. What the background is?
Yeah, what is that? Capturing Christianity's background? That's not your own? That's hilarious. Get that crap out of here, then. I thought I recognized it because I was like, "Did you get lights like his?" That's hilarious, actually.
I do have colored lights, but they're not doing anything in my background, I don't think.
And I was like, whoa, you've changed a lot since last we talked. That looks a lot different.
My hair was going in my eyes. It kept falling forward. So I cut my fringe, and then it was one of those where, like when you're like, oh, I can't get it symmetrical, so you keep kind of cutting it, and then it just got to a point where I was like, oh no, I've given myself a terrible self-made haircut. So
are you hoping that your background somehow distracts from the haircut then?
I need to. I've got quite a busy couple of weeks, and then I'm going to go on holiday for 3 or 4 days. So nice. I need to get a proper haircut at some point in the next few days. But yeah, we'll see.
My wife wants me to get a haircut tomorrow since we're leaving on Wednesday. So
right.
Completely understand. Yeah.
Awesome.
You just shave it all off, man. Just shave it all off.
I know.
I'm going that way anyway. It looks terrible. Like it's embarrassing.
I think maybe if you've got, maybe with the beard and with a family and stuff, it's a bit different. But I think if you're
still on the market, is what you're saying?
No, it's not. It's not that. It's that people start looking at me as if I'm like going to assault them in the street or something.
Oh yeah,
so, yeah. I just look like some kind of far right thug or something if I shave.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's not a worry I really have. So yeah, but yeah, I can understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, so welcome back, man. What do you want to talk about? I forget what we talked about a ton of things last time. I think it was a lot of stuff on normativity, grounding, maybe arguments for God's existence, something along those lines. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Is my audio okay, by the way? I think I've got my gain for myself turned up a little bit too high, maybe. Like where it comes back through your own earphones. I think that is weird for me, but as long as it's
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, great. Yeah, we talked about meta-ethics relationship to theism. we talked about like different senses of possibility and stuff like that. A little bit about my kind of like more pragmatist views and how they
That's
relate
right.
to
Yeah.
philosophy of language. I'm happy to talk about any of those things if you want to explore those further.
Oh my
Or we
gosh,
can talk about
they're
something
not
else.
resolved yet. Like you came on here to talk about your problems, and they're not resolved.
Yeah, they're not. Or
Oh
could talk about the J. Dyer Catholic uh, Tomaszewski, horror show
yeah,
discussion as well, which
yeah.
that was such.
Somebody mentioned that as well. Enjoyed the discussion with Dr. Tomaszewski. Christopher Tomaszewski. He is a good friend of mine. We still keep in touch, text every day. It was a grad school colleague of mine. Same class, same cohort. He's really brilliant, really smart. And then the other guy in the debate that I'm thinking of anyway, because there have been a couple now, the one that went viral on capturing Christianity, which is apropos, you've got the background there, is the one with, of course, Jay Dyer. He was against Jay Dyer, but on Tomaszewski's team was Trent Doherty, who was one of our professors at Baylor. And then along with Jay Dyer was Father Deacon Ananias. And they're both apparently Orthodox. I know Ananias is Orthodox. Jay Dyer, he might be recently Orthodox.
I think he has
Yeah.
been for about 5 to 10 years at least at this point.
Okay.
Jay.
Because I'm not that familiar with Jay Dyer. I only now know of him. Yeah, I think I'd heard his name and it like never stuck, and I was such like a common name. And then like a week before that debate, I had Googled his name and I was like, oh, this guy's something. Apparently, he's like an actor as well in a former life.
I think he's set himself up. Well, I'm not. This is what has confused me about his background as well, is that I'm not sure if the character he plays in the stuff he does on YouTube is like a character, as in that is him acting. Because this is the thing that Alex Jones played, right? When he had his court case
Wow.
around. Yeah, he was like, no, it's a character that I play
I've
online.
not considered that.
I've not thought, but I mean, it's the only thing that makes me think it is because the Jay's analysis stuff he does is all about like conspiracy theory. It's all very over the top and quite performative, and so
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it is.
It would
sincere.
not be unprecedented,
Yeah.
Alex Jones, I hadn't considered him being a character. I hadn't really followed his career or the trial or anything like that. But Stephen Colbert did the same thing on the Colbert Report. He played a real, radical Republican, and then you embody these characters. I don't know that Michael Knowles did this analysis because Michael Knowles also had an acting career, in a former life, and he did an analysis about a year and a half ago when Dylan Mulvaney was really big, and he interestingly surmised that perhaps what Dylan Mulvaney is doing is like a deep character identification, like an acting, like he's embodying the character, and he like went through in his analysis, like acting used to be like this and now it's like this, and you become the person. So like, I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility that that's what Jay Dyer is doing, but I've never thought about that. It's super interesting.
So something that would be interesting, though, I don't know if you'd be able to do it, is if you could set up Tomaszewski and Father Ananias talking to each other, because I thought they were both. I mean, I guess Trent had good points as well, but it can also be very polemical in the same way, like he kind of fed into a lot of Jay stuff. And I mean, but maybe those two would want to continue because they seem to be sort of just talking to each other pretty normally, apart from the other stuff.
The only like normal, I understand what you mean. I like Trent. I don't dislike him, let's say. And I know he's been through a lot, and I know him personally. So it seems like the people you know personally, you give more of the benefit of the doubt to. Let's put it this way. I've got several reasons to not like Trent. But also because I know him personally, and I don't I don't ignore the reasons I have to dislike him, but I like him, and then I hold him with like not very closely, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? But I'm also not just going to throw him under the bus either, because I respect him a lot. But Trent being a analytic philosopher by training and was teaching grad students, like he's got serious philosophical chops, and that just didn't come into play as clearly as it could have because Jay Dyer was in the debate. And I think that I mentioned this in the analysis video, the reaction video I did with Christopher, that I think a lot of what Trent's doing is he was just playing to the game that Jay Dyer was doing. And it's like this meta level, like,
yeah, I don't have like
engagement,
in terms of that interaction. I think from my point of view, and obviously there are a lot of author bros who have a very different point of view if you read the comments and stuff, but my point of view is that really Jay was the instigator of all the bad stuff, you know. I think that even though Trent sort of reacted to it, I don't think it was really on him for taking it there or anything, because I think the arguments that he raised were actually relevant and good, and if it had just been about that, he would have just stayed on those points. So I don't think that's
totally accurate. Yeah, I think that's totally accurate. He wasn't the first to take it there, and yeah, for sure. I did joke with him though, because he was doing a follow-up debate, you know, because initially I think Jay's initial problem with him is he was eating, and that somehow upset him, and then he just like goes off the rails. And so I told Trent before his next debate, I was like, man, you should just crush a rack of ribs like right in the middle of the debate and see what reaction you get. He didn't do it, unfortunately, but I texted him that, and so I even texted Trent, and I texted him that, and he's like, LOL, I totally should.
I think, I mean, at least Jay's intention from the start, right, was obviously not to really talk about the actual content of the debate, because he immediately just jumped into an attack of Catholicism being consistent with itself.
Yeah.
And I mean, those are, I think, interesting points. And I would actually, you know, I'd be interested in, well, I've heard a lot of, let's say during COVID, there was a lot of time where there are a lot of, what should I say, fringe Catholics, but maybe in the US, some of them aren't so fringe, but having like sedevacantist debates where they were often, you know, talking about these obscure pieces of doctrine that the magisterium in the, you know, 14th century said, and how that's in tension with what someone was saying now. So, I mean, I know that there's basically, you know, if you have an institution that's 2,000 years old, there's a lot of things they said, and it's going to be very easy to pick things out and say, well, this seems like it's in tension with this, and like decontextualize everything, and it's going to take an immense amount of historical work to,
for sure. But I don't think it's that complicated as it seems. Like, I'm glad you framed it in the way you did, because we can appreciate all the different voices throughout the centuries. But I think you can simplify it really easily by just looking at what's dogmatic, like what's dogmatic, what's actual dogma, church doctrine. And then getting clear on like what distinctions there are in terms of like what a papal encyclical is versus what a papal bull is, you know, versus, you know, whatever. I don't even know. The apostolical letter would be another one. And these are all publications by the hand of the Pope. And then you have more when you consider the councils and the documents that they generate. And you have to be like, okay, which one of these have like, carry the most weight, because they're not all equal. And so the ones that carry the most weight would be the dogmatic constitutions from the councils. And then the Pope, of course, you probably know that he only speaks from the seat of Peter. He's only infallible, considered infallible, when he speaks from the seat of Peter. And so, and that was almost never happened, maybe like a couple times throughout history. So like getting clear on like, okay, what are the important things that have been promulgated? And then it's like, well, it first simplifies it because you have less to work with, but then also you start to see this like incredible, simplified, streamlined, approach or case that's being put forward. I think that's what Christopher was pointing to, because he's like, okay, in whatever council J. Dyer brought up, I think it was, I don't know, Lateran ones, or maybe it was Vatican I or something, or the Council of Trent. He said, okay, there is a document from that council on, what God the Muslims worship, but it's not a dogmatic document because it doesn't bear on faith and morals. So something's going to be dogmatic, like that the church proclaims and then holds as dogma, is only going to be something that's on faith and morals. Something that's like on politics, something that's on, ontological status of, God's standing in another religion, or maybe even how transubstantiation works. So all that stuff is not going to bear on faith and morals, so it's not going to be dogmatically, holding or binding.
Yeah, I guess from my point of view, there aren't really problems exactly in this vicinity, but at least just from an independent perspective, sort of studying history, right? For example, like one papal bull I learnt about today was when Queen Elizabeth became the Queen of England after Queen Mary. There was a papal bull with respect to, so Mary had been a Catholic, so her dad Henry VIII, he was the one who started the English, the English Church's secession from Rome, basically, during the context of the Reformation. Church of England is a little bit more kind of Catholic, and then his daughter had been a Catholic, so she'd gone back to uniting with Rome, and then Elizabeth went back to going away from Rome. And there's this papal bull that was like, so I forget specifically what it said, but it's to the degree of like anyone who does anything that Elizabeth asks them to do, and is follows the laws of the land in this way, or whatever, they're excommunicated from the church and stuff. And I think that if you wanted to, it would be, I think, fairly easy to sort of decontextualize some of that stuff and sort of say, oh yeah, so if there are Catholics living in England today and they abide by laws that were put down by the regent or something, well then they're technically excommunicated from the church, or their intention. But I think that would be so sort of misleading, because there's like hundreds of years, a very specific case. It's not clear
exactly
what the kind of like scope of that claim is, or it's just the Catholic Church being thousands of years old, there's stuff like this that's pretty weird, and if you actually dig into it, there's probably a way of making sense of it. I'm not saying this just to sort of like simp for the Catholic Church or something, but I do think that it's fairly, I don't know, it's just looking for cheap gotchas, I think, if you go for something like that, to say, oh yeah,
absolutely,
so English Catholics today, they're in tension with Rome or something.
Yeah. and it's important to find those distinctions, and I feel a little like weird about saying, hey, we need to distinguish. Although I do philosophy, that's what you do in philosophy. You make distinctions, and you're a very careful thinker. But I can hear the the echoes of people, perhaps that, because I also know like when I'm going to be attacked, and that's like an easy attack point. It's like, oh, and so you're just saying this because you don't. Anyway, but yeah, somebody says here, a lot of church councils have passed mainly disciplinary resolutions, and I'll even add or clarify this by saying that many of the documents that are produced by councils are disciplinary. I think that's maybe what this person meant. And so yeah, that's absolutely true. So, and this gets into what you were saying. So like, if a council, say, I don't know, 15, 16, 1700s, or even earlier, has a proclamation declaring Albigensians a heresy, like, does that have bearing on today? Well, in some ways it does, but like, it's also going to contain in that document, because it's not just one line. It's going to be like, well, anathema to these people, and here's what we do with them, and this yada 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 yada, and then like all these attendant details in there, like, and they shall not be given communion in this state which no longer exists. It's like, well, or they're going to be punished according to, let's say, the diplomatic wing of Rome, and it's like, well, that doesn't exist anymore. It's the Vatican now, and they don't really have a lot of political powers they once used to. So like, you have to like think like a historian if you're going to go into like the historical church documents.
And I think that's why it's also a little bit of a, I don't know, like a sort of cheap move in a debate to sort of produce a quote from, when you think of the sort of documentation that was produced by the administrative proceedings of the church over these thousands of years, there's literally, stacks and stacks of books.
Oh, yeah.
And someone's going to pull like, point 1, point 3, point 2, point 13, from the the 12th meeting of the council on this. And, you're expected to, there's literally no chance you've got of responding to that and being able to go, oh yeah, I remember that was the council where they discussed
that's where canon lawyers come in handy. Like, they're the ones who deal with that stuff. A canon lawyer, not just there's a guy at our parish. He doesn't work at the parish. He works for the archdiocese, and his name's Father Reginald. They call him Reg. He's this old black man, kind of hunkered over and like waddles around, and he's a canon lawyer, and he's a civil lawyer as well. He used to teach at I think Washington University of St. Louis, which is a really good law school. The guy knows his stuff, man. And canon lawyers have to know their stuff. So he's got a law degree in civil law from an actual like civil university, and he's got a canon law degree, a different law degree from
So it's
Pontifical University. It's an actual Juris Doctor. I don't think it's called Juris Doctor. It might be like LLD or something like that. From in sacred canon law is what it's called. So yeah, I think it might be an STD. That might be the Sacred Theology Doctorate. But I don't think
an unfortunate acronym.
Yeah, right. they sometimes make the T in there lowercase. ST period D period, you know. Yeah, or it might be an LLD, which is what I think the UK schools have.
Yeah,
that,
they
but
have those,
we don't really have it as much. Yeah, so it may harken back to Europe with those labels. I don't know where he got his let's call it Juris Doctorate in canon law, but many times those guys, if it's in canon law, you have to get it from a Pontifical University, which is like licensed by Rome, licensed in the sense that it's pontifical, in the sense that like 75% of their faculty have either sacred theology degrees or are priest or a priest. You could be a priest also. So it has that deep faithfulness to the Catholic tradition. So these aren't like land grant universities, and yeah. So the canon law stuff, man, that's exactly what their bread and butter is. And I have all the respect in the world for them, because I didn't even know like all the different names of the documents that a Pope can write. Like that's basic stuff you learn like pre L1, I guess.
Yeah, and it's all, you know, it's just incredibly complicated, as you can. I mean, just knowing about the past 50 or 100 years of some aspect of the legal system in the UK, right, would be complicated enough.
Yeah.
Never mind understanding medieval institutions or older and all that stuff. Like, you know, it's and that's why I say I just think it's really poor form in a debate. Well, I guess debates are about winning, but I just think it's really poor form to bring one of these things out of context and go, this guy said this and that's in tension with that, and there you go.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah, man, I'd love to see a debate with a canon lawyer on those issues. I mean, it wouldn't even be a debate at that point, because it's not like the church doesn't see these as like debatable things. It's like canon law, once you learn it and you're faithful to the church, it's like being faithful to the law. That you can't really debate like, should we have a seatbelt law? Like, I mean, that's not a law debate. It's like a philosophical debate at that point, and you can have that. But like, if it's just like, what does the law say? If that's the question, what does the Catholic Church say about that? That's easily just fine. It's discoverable. Just go out and look.
Well, I would say, though, even on that, this is part of the problem with these platforms and debates and so on, is that you can have someone who's much more knowledgeable, but in a context with someone like Jay Dyer, they have the ability to overtalk, to use... Yeah. I mean, I think rhetoric can be a good part of a persuasion, but I think bad kinds of rhetoric that are going to frame things or give someone too much information that they've then got to unpack, and they'll look like they're on the back foot and scrambling, and all of that stuff would... I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't people who can deal with that or whatever, but it's why I think it's a bad format, even if you had someone who actually has a lot of good stuff to say, and you could get a lot out of them, but then you just wouldn't in that context, because you'd have to deal with like all of Jay Dyer's like antics, basically, rather than getting into it.
I mean, there are some people, and this is probably why I don't do debates, there are some people who are really masterful at them. I think William Lane Craig is a masterful debater. He like is trained in debate, and he's also really bright. Those always don't always go together, because like Alex Proust, who's like more genius than William Lane Craig, I consider, he doesn't do debates, he doesn't do public speaking, engagements at all. But so William Lane Craig is one of them. He's got 2 doctorates. He's really, really bright. I think Gary Habermas is another one. He did a debate years ago with Antony Flew. Antony Flew has now passed away. He's an atheist. So I was on the Resurrection, I think. So, and then I think also like nowadays,
you missed an apologetic opportunity. He was an atheist. He converted on his deathbed.
Well, believe it or not, Anthony Flew did convert on his deathbed, before his deathbed, actually. So if you look, he published some stuff really late in life. It was a big thing, hit the news and all that. Like I think in his 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, something like that. However long ago, he said something about like why I am no longer an atheist. He wrote some stuff about it. So that's it. I don't know if he went all the way to like Orthodox Christianity or anything, but
I think he was possibly a deist. But I think there's been some controversy
that seems right.
about there was there was a specific book on this account of his conversion that was published, and I think that some people who were close to him have sort of objected to some of the framing of that. It's not something I've looked into a lot, but it seems like it could be a case where maybe some of it's being overstated, or some, I don't know the specifics of what's going on there, though.
Yeah. Well, he did publish something. He wrote it himself. So I guess we could just, refer to that. But there's a couple of like recent people that I really respect debating. Like Charlie Kirk is really good as far as like being really, really self-aware and very presence of mind to like, especially while people are like yelling at you. I could not do this like when he speaks on college campuses and still know what he's talking about and not lose his train of thought. Like that would be helpful.
At the Cambridge Union, not with British students.
Yeah, and then Ben Shapiro also, like those guys are at least have that ability to be really, really sharp and be incisive in their commentary and to think on the fly, like really, really quickly. It's a skill, and so it's really helpful. I don't know if either of those. I think Ben Shapiro has probably some debate skills. I don't know about Charlie Kirk because I don't think he has a college degree. But yeah,
I guess he does this full time now, though, so he must have some kind. And there's a lot of money involved in his side of politics. So I mean, I guess there's some kind of prep and stuff that they do.
Yeah, Charlie Kirk just made South Park, by the way. I don't know if you saw that.
I've heard of what's gone on in the first few episodes, and I don't know. I will be.
I don't follow it, but I don't follow the storylines or anything. But I just noticed when and he made a big deal out of it, like changed his profile and stuff that he made South Park or whatever. So like,
I heard about the challenge to Trump to sue the creators of South Park, which I don't know. I don't know how much he'll actually.
Interesting.
That and I think that's what they were trying to do is insult him so much that he would like try and sue them. But
yeah. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, but those are guys that I think that those kinds of skills, being able to think on your feet very clearly while people are screaming over you, that's going to be the kind of skills that are going to, I think, be able to counter somebody like a Jay Dyer who just like, I call it gish galloping. That's technical name for it. It's like you just talk over people, you change the topic over and over and over. Like having somebody who has enough presence of mind and quick memory to remember everything that was said and then have a response like just as quickly, that takes a lot of skill. And that skill I don't have.
Yeah, I agree with you that those guys are skilled debaters. I think I still take issue with a lot of them, and it's not even just because of like the views they defend or anything. It's more so I think because those skills are neutral on whether they're exhibiting like intellectual virtues. I would say, like for example,
that's a good point. Yeah,
I really admire with Craig, for example, his like work ethic throughout his career and all of that sort of stuff. But there are a lot of instances in debates that I can look to where he's sort of doing something that I consider to be a little bit kind of trickstery, sort of where he's doing something that in the context of that debate, sure, it's gonna have good optics for him or for, put his opponent in a bad light. But in a non-debate context, if you're just thinking about this for yourself, you shouldn't be agreeing with the thing that he's putting forward as like a reason to dismiss the other person's ideas. It's kind of like a little debate move. I mean, a good example of this was Alex Malpass pointed out two contradictory beliefs that Craig had. And I think that in a normal sort of collaborative discussion, we would think, well, we should, it's not clear if I should reject this one or that one, or maybe believe something else that resolves the tension. Who knows? But that's at least a problem, and I should accept that and move forward. But in a debate context where it's about the optics, Craig said to Alex, this is actually an example of ad hominem, and he's technically right. There is a form of ad hominem.
Oh, interesting.
Which refers to when a person themselves, the beliefs that a person has and whether they're in contradiction with themselves. But then, obviously, for most of the audience, then they're just thinking, "Oh, fallacy! Like Alex has committed a fallacy."
Right? Yeah.
And then there's just not the space and time in the debate context to like unpack all of that for an audience and win the optics war.
Yeah.
And it's just a little bit like, oh, come on, like is it about winning or is it about being, having a sense of honesty in this or something? And not that he's not honest overall, it's just in the debate context. So,
yeah, I'd have to go look at that clip. And you say it's with who now?
Alex Malpass, it was.
Like Malthus? Like
Malpass.
Malpass, okay.
Malpass. Yeah.
Oh, Malpass. Okay. Yeah,
I
I've
think
not.
Alex might have written a blog post on that specific part as well. I can't remember, but
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, it would seem I could see both sides of it, just like thinking about it and not watching it. But it would seem like here's the thing about ad hominems in general and fallacies in general. Like if you're talking about informal fallacies, formal fallacies are like affirming the consequent or denying the antecedent. Those are formal fallacies based on the form of the argument that went wrong. But most fallacies, like if you could pick up a like argument book, they're going to be informal fallacies. All informal fallacies of knowledge, or all informal fallacies of logic, to my knowledge, are also fallacies of relevance, which means like they only apply in relevant scenarios. So it could be that an ad hominem, let's say maneuver, an ad hominem maneuver rather than a fallacy. Actually, let's call all instances of ad hominems, let's call them maneuvers. Not all ad hominem maneuvers will be fallacious. Okay, so it could be that you use an ad hominem maneuver to point out some, let's say in a moral argument, like some inconsistency in the speaker's character. And I think that's an appropriate use of ad hominem. That's not a fallacious use. It would be a relevant sense, not an irrelevant sense. But anyway, so I don't know which way he's doing this, but if he's sharing something in the argument and then Malpass points out, oh, this is what, it's not that the person is being inconsistent because or that the beliefs that they're holding is inconsistent, so that's some attack on his character. It's just that this position and this position are inconsistent. If he can point that out and like divorce it from the person, those positions are inconsistent. Then at that point, I don't see why he would bring that up.
yeah, I think it's because there is this sense of ad hominem where it's like, well, you're talking about me and the beliefs I have. And so when you say it's me who believes this and this, then it's about me and my character, which is irrelevant to the argument. And it's kind of like, that's why I mean, it's like, well, it is relevant. Well, I guess to be fair to Craig, he doesn't say it's irrelevant to the argument, but he implies it by saying the words ad hominem, right? And this is where it becomes like tricky to disentangle for an audience, and I think it maybe can be slightly misleading to an audience. And there's a number of examples sort of like this that I think can be given of sort of Craig doing this in debate contexts. And like I say, I divorce that very much from, I think he's got a really good work ethic as a philosopher that people, there's like a bunch of blog posts that, was it a guy called like Killing Buddha or something? That someone did like a blog post where they spent like a week with Craig looking at how he like spends his week and his study habits and stuff. And of course, maybe he's putting some of that on, but really admirable stuff, I think, overall.
Oh, I don't think so. You can't change habits that quickly. He's a former professor of mine. I don't know him. I know him personally. I never took a class from him, but he was one of the professors. And in fact, I was a little bit intimidated to take a class with him because when he was around, it was at Talbot School of Theology in Southern California at Biola University. He was only hired or on staff as a research professor. I think he also does the same position for Houston Christian University, formerly Houston Baptist University. But it's a research professor. Basically, they just pay you to write, research, and travel, and do all that. You don't really have to teach, but he did teach one class, and it was always over winter break, like the interterm period, which was like, I think it was a week-long or maybe 2-week-long class. And I was like, there's no way I can fit an entire semester's worth of material from William Lane Craig into 2 weeks. And so many of the guys did, and that's probably a regret. I probably should have done that and just pushed myself, but that I was really intimidated by that. So I fully believe his work ethic. Every time I've talked with him, actually I asked him personally because I ended up doing my dissertation on depression, and I asked him once, get a little bit of advice. I was like, hey, do you experience depression, and like, how do you overcome that? Like, do you have any tips, for me as a young scholar and thinker? And he was, his response was, no, not really. I don't get depressed. And I was like, well, God bless you. You're not one of the high percentage of people who do. So I just assumed, the philosophy attracts melancholic personalities, and but apparently he's not one of them.
Yeah, he seems a very, I mean, obviously not that that's necessarily any read into that, but he seems generally like a peculiarly transparent and upbeat person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
but in terms of he does have a physical and neuromuscular disease, and so that's even
does.
part of his work ethic is like every day he's doing like weights like 2 or 3 times a day.
That's right.
Which I thought
Yep.
was quite impressive alongside his routine as well. You
Yeah.
know, all the studying that he's doing.
If you look at debates, even in like debates from like 15, 20 years ago, he's got something with his thumb. He's got to like, it's in a shape. Yeah. It's like kind of locked there. And even when you shake his hand, it's like weird. You're shaking like just a skeletal form of him. Like it's very weird because he doesn't like grip on, you know?
Right. Yeah. It's a shame, but
yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, we have a few people in the waiting room.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'll hop off.
But
then.
let's, I'll give you the last word and then we'll wrap up here.
Oh, I've got nothing much to say. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Maybe
Of
talk again
course,
at some point
man,
soon.
Nathan, it's always good when you come on, and I hope this isn't the last time. It's always a pleasure to see you, and good evening to you, I guess. What time is it there now?
It is 10:17, so I'm gonna get some food, do a little bit more work, and then go to sleep at some point. So
Nice. Well, I'll be in the time zone next to you here next week. I'll be over in Europe, but not in your neck of the woods.
oh,
So.
not in the UK, just
No, I'll be over in the Baltics and Finland.
oh, cool, awesome.
Yeah, just a little tour of the. My wife wanted a little celebratory trip for finding a new job, and she loves to travel, so we're going places we have never been. So
We'll have a
it'll
good
be
time.
fun. Yeah, we'll do. All right, good to
Right.
see you, and I hope to
See
see you
ya.
next time.
Bye,
All right,
bye.
bye. All right, wonderful. Okay, that was awesome. So we're going to bring in Ben here, who is now off work, and sorry to keep you waiting. You've been there for a little while. And,
No, it's fine. It's all good.
good to
Can you
see
hear me
you
okay?
again. Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. What do you want to talk
Okay.
about?
I was gonna say, I had one thing that because I think there might have been a confusion. You responded. I responded to your post about the modal ontological argument. It's funny because I think I mentioned pizza, and it just happened to be that other guy also mentioned pizza.
Yeah.
But
Hold on, your mic. Hold on, your mic is doing some weird things. Keeps popping, like on certain words. I don't know.
Is it
Yeah, it's like
loud
burping
or-
at us. It's like burping at us every.
Let me try. Here, I could try. I wonder if this will.
Let me see if this is better.
I think that sounds better, actually.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, now we can't hear you at all. Sorry about that, Ben. No, can't hear you at all. Okay, we'll give Ben a couple seconds. Yeah, Bear was saying it might be your headphones, but you didn't have to have your earbuds anyway. Yeah, now we can hear something.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear that. Yep.
You can hear.
Okay, that should work.
I'm clear.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's always technology. Gotta
Yeah.
figure it out.
All right, you are free.
But the point I was trying to make with the pizza was not the idea, because you were talking about the modal ontological argument, and I think that guy was saying like, oh well, you could have like the best pizza in the world,
Yeah.
you know. But my point was more about the properties of God. Like for instance, you could have like if you have like a padlock or something, like the properties that make something a great padlock aren't going to be the same properties that make like a good pizza or whatever. Like
That makes sense.
pizza, you want to be edible and soft. A padlock, you want to be hard and like sturdy or whatever.
For sure.
So that was more my point. Like I don't think there's like when you talk about great making properties, I don't know what it would mean for a property to be great making in and of itself, independent.
I get your point here. So just by way of review here for people listening. So we connected in the comments over this issue, and then I was like, hey, go look at this last live stream, and it is just the last live stream. Towards the end, I was talking. I guess the conversation arose that the guy could do a substitution in the modal argument. I guess Anselm's original modal argument I guess it would work with the modal one ontological argument. I guess it would work with the modal one as well, but that the idea that a maximally great being would be something like pizza. And you're saying here that, well, thank you for the suggestion. You went and watched it, thankfully. But you're saying, well, it's not that wasn't really your point. You're saying to get the modal ontological argument to work, let's just use that one, you have to know what a maximally great being, I guess, per se would be, and like what maximally great properties themselves would be, because that's going to be different depending on what you refer it to. So like what you refer a pizza is going to be great if it has pineapple, apparently. So objective ethics says this. I know hope unknowns, but maximally great pizza must include pineapple. That's actually who was in the conversation that I sent you to.
Yeah.
So must include pineapple. Maybe that's the great making property of of pizza. And then of course you said something, I forget what tool, maybe a wrench or something, or a hammer or something like that. Well, that can't be soft. It's got to be hard. That's going to be the maximally great. That all makes sense to me. So. But you're wondering, okay, what is it that would be the great making properties of God? Is that kind of the worry here?
Yeah, I mean, you could even imagine with people, like what makes someone a great like judge might be different than what makes somebody a good warrior or like or like a soldier. And I just for me, it's hard to know what great making is independent of like great, like towards what end. Basically,
I actually love this point because it's both consistent with Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics and Peter Geach's idea of good. Like good's got to be sort of like he as an example. I think he uses, maybe he doesn't use this example, but let's talk about goodness itself. Goodness has got to be good of something. So this is why we can say of moral goodness, but we can also say of a thief that he's a good thief because it's relative to his role as a thief. And there was some work I was like helping do with a graduate instructor on this stuff, and he thought, he was the chair of the department at the time, Michael Beatty, and he thought at the time that it might be that it's based on your role, and so I guess role for him would be something that's fundamental. That could mean role in society, but it also could apply to God. Like, so it's going to be God in his role as God. So God qua God would be great according to whatever role God plays. So I don't know if I like fully buy this, but I think it's helpful because then that might, I don't know if I fully buy it because it might reduce God to like just whatever role he plays. And then it's like you get into problems of functionalism that parallel with problems with functionalism and philosophy of mind. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. It's not,
like
it's
an
not just at the brain.
role that God has played, kind of.
Like in functionalism, the idea is like the brain is something that plays a function. It's not really or the mind is something that plays a function. It's not really itself something. It would be like ontological. An ontological subtraction is what it is. You don't want something to be there, and so you subtract it. So I think the worry I have is that if you say that something just reduces to its role, then you've kind of subtracted the something from it, and just what's left is just the role.
Yeah, anyway, I mean, in general, I have sympathies more towards like structuralist views. In general, so I have a hard time understanding what it means for things to like just have like independent intrinsic like properties to begin with, like independent of their whole dispositions and stuff like that. So maybe that's you're part of my
sympathetic reason. I guess you would say you're sympathetic to this idea that or at least it's like consistent with what you're describing, like in order to find something's great making properties, let's say, and you can even say it's virtues, because virtues at the end of the day, they're just excellences. This is like moral excellences, sure, but also intellectual essences. And this is why, in the Greek, arete just means excellence. It can translate to virtue, but this is why we can talk about excellence of a knife or the virtues of a knife. So we can talk about the virtues of a horse. We can talk about virtues of a dog. These are the excellent or great making properties of those things. So I think just by saying great making properties, you're saying virtues. I think
for
those
instance,
are just the same thing.
I could imagine like somebody like, for instance, you could say, I can imagine something that's like someone that's maximally just, and then another person that's like maximally what am I saying? Forgiving or maximally merciful. And those seem like two like almost contrary properties. So I'm not saying that's necessarily the case, but I'm saying like related, like you can have like something that's maximally hard, something that's maximally black, something that's maximally like I can imagine all sorts of properties that could be maximized to their furthest degree.
Here's
And,
what I see what you mean. So let me just take the example of the virtues you just gave, just and merciful. I don't think those are necessarily contradictory to be maximally just and maximally merciful, because it's not like you're saying maximally hard, maximally soft, where there's a clear, direct contradiction. In this case, to be maximally any virtue is to be the mean of that virtue, like the moderation of that virtue. So it's in order to use that virtue to. So in order to be, let's say, maximally courageous is not to be a coward on the one hand, that would be the deficiency, and it's not to be a fool, like to be foolhardy or rash. That would be like where you're overdoing it. So a coward's like, running out to battle shoulder to shoulder with your comrades. Coward, you're hiding behind a rock. Foolishness would be running out there and getting your first person to get killed. So like, I think the mean is where the virtue is. This is according to Aristotle. So to be maximally, so this, to clear this up too. So it's almost a category error to say that somebody is too courageous. On this view, you can't be too courageous. Like, you can be the most courageous you can be, and that's why we can talk about maximally courageous or maximally any virtue, because it's not that you're being, so to be a fool, to be rash, to be this vice over here, it's not that you're being too courageous. You're being too much of whatever it is, such that were it were in moderation, it would be courage. And so, in other words, it's being too gung-ho and not having enough self-restraint, so it'd be an excess of those things, but not going to be an excess of courage. And in fact, it's not with any with any virtue like justice or mercy, to be maximally just, to be maximally merciful. It's weird to even say that, because to be maximally courageous to be too courageous would be something like being too. Let's take drink. Sobriety would be the virtue for that. Sobriety is moderation in drink. That's like me saying, man, I had way too much, an excess of moderate drink last night. That's like you're talking past each, like you're saying a contradiction. You're having too much of a moderation. So, but you can have an excellence in that moderation. I think that's where that maximally just comes from, and where the maximally merciful comes from, because again, with prudence, it's going to depend on where you apply these and what scenarios. So I could be maximally just over here, and I could be maximally merciful over here, based on prudence, like where I apply these things. But anyway, I've said a lot there. Is that making any sense?
I'd probably have to think about it a little bit, because to me, the idea of something being to a maximal degree, like, sounds strange in relation to moderation.
Yeah.
Like it's like, I mean, I could see maybe in like the character of a person why you'd want to balance those, but then it in that case, it does seem to me that there's a balancing of competing properties. Like,
let's put it this way. So like, let's take love or even faithfulness with my wife. Like, can I be too loving or too faithful? In some sense, no. Like, that's just what I'm supposed to be, maximally faithful, let's say. So what does that mean? Well, faithfulness, if we break it down, is the virtue. And every virtue, according to Aristotle, has a deficiency and an excess. So, there would be an excessive vice over here. The deficiency also, obviously, for faithfulness would be the deficiency of adultery. Like, you're cheating, so we're not being faithful. So faithfulness is the moderation. What in the world could the excess vice over here be? Not too faithful. It's being too overbearing. Like if you think in dating context, like, I don't know, helicoptering somebody and being really oppressive in your affections and so on. That would be excessive to the effect that it's no longer faithful. It's no longer the virtue. But so what does being maximally faithful then mean, or maximally loving? It would mean in all cases where I'm able to apply that virtue correctly. That would be what it means. So we could look at this in hindsight. Have I done X, Y, and Z when it comes to being faithful? Have I done what it takes to be faithful or loving? Have I done these things? And so if I have, check mark on that. And if I have, we just think like, well, if I've done all those things, then then it could be said truly of me that I've been maximally faithful in every possible scenario where it's arise that I've been able to exercise this. But if you're just thinking of like the conceptual space with like excess the other way, like that's not excess of virtue, because that's a category error. It's excess of my affections and a misuse of my attention and probably a little selfishness on my part. That's all like other stuff that's being disordered in here. But with respect to the actual virtue of faithfulness, it's not excessive faithfulness.
Yeah, to me, that I would think of those as like different properties. Would you say that occurs with all properties of God? Because like, all
virtues,
powerful,
yeah.
maybe, well, God being all powerful, like, oh, well, he needs a balance, like he needs to lack a certain, like, oh, maybe if he's too powerful, he's overbearing, so he must have a balance of weakness and power. Like, I don't know.
No. So I don't know if, so I did say all virtues would have this. I don't know when you start to talk about the divine attributes, if these are in moderation. I mean, it seems obviously that they're not, but there might also be different senses or respects, or, I think Aquinas would be helpful on this, but
yeah.
Go ahead.
What would be
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
excess of justice? What would be like overly just?
It
Can you be
depends
too
on what.
just?
Yes. But again, it's like being too courageous. It's not really courageous that you're being like some kind of warped version of courage that you think is courage, but it's not really. Like the foolish person who runs out into battle and gets himself killed, he thinks he's being courageous, but he's not. It's some warped understanding of what courage actually is. And so justice, according to Aquinas, would be giving to others what they are due. And that's very general, of course. So a lack of justice, deficiency, would just be not giving them enough, and then excess would be giving them too much.
Well, but if it was too much, it would no longer be just, because it's part of the concept of just, that it's what's due to the person.
Yeah, exactly. So then that would be a vice. It wouldn't be the virtue at all. You're right. It would no longer be justice. So then, is your question then for maximal justice? What would that be? I think that would mean applying justice in all possible cases that have needed you to apply it. Like that you have shown yourself, you have proven yourself to be just in every possible scenario where it's possible to be just.
But isn't mercy, I mean, the reason I brought those two up, I'm not even necessarily committed to this. Isn't mercy part of the idea of mercy, forgiving somebody for which they're not worthy, or like giving somebody something that they don't necessarily deserve?
Yeah. So mercy, I don't know if, at least on Aquinas' view, that I think he puts it as a virtue. If he doesn't, he should, but it might not actually be on his chart and diagram of virtues. I think he might place it instead in the gifts of the Spirit. Like,
is that in the Summa where he talks about this?
Yeah. It's in the Summa Secunda Pars. At the end, he talks about the. I mean, let's just take a look. If you want to, we can take a look at it. So,
sure.
So,
yeah, I've read parts of it, but I've only I've skimmed certain sections. That's about it. So.
So the Secundae. So right here he goes through all of the, in the Secundae he goes through faith, hope, and love, the theological virtues, and then he goes through the 4 cardinal virtues, prudence, temperance, fortitude, and then right here he goes through the gifts of the Spirit, including not only gifts but particular gifts, lives, and states of life. And I think he puts mercy and charity actually, so he does see it as a subspecies of love. And now, I mean, that makes sense because mercy is so charity, and on this understanding, would be a theological virtue. Means it's infused by God. Well, you can do acts of love, but you can't really have the virtue itself unless it's given by God, infused by God. But mercy, it's important to remember that it is a kind of love, because misericordia, the word, it literally means misery of the heart. So it's a love, and it's also like it's a sadness, because it's like you're pained in the heart. It's like, ugh. but it's also a love that makes you do that. So
Yeah,
how do you combine justice and mercy? I think it, like Adventures in Philology says here, imprudence. I think he was referring to something else, like, you know, maybe rashness or foolhardiness or something like that. But for Aquinas, every error in virtue, like any time that you actually do a bad thing, do a sin, would be an instance of imprudence. It would be a failure of prudence plus whatever else. So this certainly would involve. So when you do it right, virtue, it means also on the opposite, it would mean it involves an execution of prudence, you know, an excellence of prudence. So prudence is it would be required. You mentioned early on something about balancing out these things, and that's exactly what you need. You need prudence in order. So let me give you an example. So say I have these conflicting virtues. We'll give you a simple example. Like my wife comes to me and says, you know, do I look fat in this? Well, you know, I've got some choices to make. Well, I can either be honest or I can be kind. Well, or I can try to do both. That would be the ideal scenario. Like, and I better have prudence or wisdom if I want to do that. So I got to make sure that I'm being as kind as possible and also as honest as possible. I want to make sure that I'm honoring both those virtues. And I think that that would still be an instance of being maximally truthful and maximally kind in the situation in which it's required. And I think then you can still say truthfully of me that I've been maximally kind and maximally truthful. And I think that may be the sort of scenario you're trying to get after when you're saying maximally just and maximally merciful.
I think part of the problem is that justice by its nature is like I can't imagine excess, because like the very concept is a balancing. I mean, like the famous like image of the balancing of scales, Lady Justice. She's it's like getting what you deserve, and giving you more than you deserve would be unjust, and giving you less than you deserve would be unjust. Whereas mercy seems like like intention with that, but like that's why it's hard for me to imagine like being too just. Like I can understand with some of the examples that you're giving.
Yeah, I have a nice handout here on. I'm trying to find it on the way to balance these out. Let me see if I can find it. Handouts, notes, Aquinas. Let's just use this one. Share screen on this. Okay. So this, let me just scoot down to right here.
This is something you made?
Yeah, this one doesn't have it.
Nice.
This is an older one. So let me try to find a better one. It's funny because I don't know where all these are on my darn computer, because I modify them and then I've had them for different classes and so on. Let's just search.
And also, if you had time, did have like one argument that I'm not sure I've ever heard anybody else give that I thought maybe you might be interested in, since you're interested in psychological and like depression and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. One sec. Okay. So here it is. This is the one I was looking for. And if we scoot down here, we can see this entire chart, the classification of the natural moral virtues. You have justice here. There are 4 cardinal virtues. One's prudence, others justice, fortitude, and temperance, like I mentioned before. So justice breaks down. Justice itself is, like I said earlier, giving to others what they are due or what they deserve, what what you owe them. And that would be understood, like you see, it breaks down principle and secondary. Principle would be things you would expect, like general legal justice, distributive justice, commutative justice, restorative justice, those sorts of things. And those, like that would, mimic what you had in mind with the image of like legal justice, like balancing of the scales.
Yeah, Lady Liberty, and not Lady Liberty. Whatever it's called, with the scales.
Yeah, blind justice or something like that. Yeah, so like seeking the common good. How do I give this person this and give this person this in order to seek the common good? That would be justice, and then doing that in moderation. But you have the secondary instances, the more interesting ones that are like, where giving to others what they're due. Well, I owe something to God. This is where the debt is too great to pay in full. I'll never repay God. I'll never repay my country or my parents, or anything like that. Or right here is where the debt's not strict, but it's necessary. I should be truthful. Why is truthfulness a species of justice or secondary sub virtue of justice, because it's given to others what they are due, namely the truth. I owe it to others to tell people the truth. And then same thing down here. It's where, mercy is right here. He puts it also in justice. It's where it is given to others what they are due, namely this liberality. I don't know. Actually, I'd have to look at the. I wouldn't hang my hat on that, because they might be saying the same thing. I think this is a Dominican scholar who put this up here. OP guy, priest. Liberality. Liberality is just generosity. He should have just said generosity, but I may have to look in the source for that. But yeah, I don't know if that mercy belongs there. But anyway, yeah, that's
Would it be the kind of idea that there's certain categories of things that, although you may be due punishment, that it's not unjust to forego the punishment? Or I'm not exactly sure how that would work.
Yes. So let me bring this back up, because this will be helpful. So here's an interesting right. So you need prudence to balance out any of this. So here is a vindication, which is species of justice, vindication, duty to punish. In other words, I owe it to people and to the common good, people who have done wrong. I have a duty to punish them. But down here, right here, clemency, I don't know if you can see that, there's a desire to punish. So up here, duty to punish, desire to punish. And when we're going over there, this students, I'll often be like, okay, how do those work? Like, in what way would these like interact? Because this one he places in temperance involves like my passions and my desires. Right here, I have a desire to punish. It could be, let's take my son, for example. If he does wrong, I do have a duty to punish him, but I also need to have an appropriate desire to punish him. My desire could be way too strong, obviously. That's not good if I enjoy it, or that I don't enjoy it, right? And that may sometimes conflict with my duty, because what if I'm just, negligent in my duty to punish my son? Like that, that would be a vice. And so this involves my duty or obligation to make sure that wrongdoing is punished. This involves my own desires. And he names this one clemency, which is super interesting, because that's often a synonym for mercy, like having mercy on somebody. But I'm not sure if that is what he's trying to capture here, offering someone clemency. It may involve that, like if I don't exercise my strong desire to punish, if I want to restrain that.
I'd have to look it up. For me, the connotation of clemency is that you're being forgiven the punishment, but not necessarily like absolved of the crime, kind of thing. Is, I don't know, that's the connotation clemency kind of has in my mind.
Yeah. It would. So some of these don't track. Some of these terms are a little antiquated, because like if you look here, chastity, abstinence, sobriety, sex, food, and drink, he puts food under abstinence. So like that's pretty antiquated. Like we use abstinence for sex, although it makes sense if you remember that fasting just involves abstaining from food. So okay,
I get that.
So it may be like terminologically, clemency has some role right here that like makes it such that he's like trying to pinpoint just like one tiny component
the Latin roots of words often
right, and then
sense to them, whereas
exactly, and then maybe we understand clemency way different that he does now. Yeah. So anyway, we got totally sidetracked there, but sorry about that. We were talking about God's attributes.
I did. I mean, we could talk more about that. I did have one argument, but I don't know if you have time for. It's an argument that I looked around for, but I don't know if I've seen anybody else put it forward.
Let me just say real quick. So I did see a couple of people in the waiting room, and I hope to see them back, but they kind of dipped after realizing it's going to be a little long. But I'll give you another like 5 to 8 minutes or so, and then I hope get them to come back, because I really wanted to talk to them. But we'll give you another 5 minutes or so.
I mean, I haven't looked like too hard, but I looked around like a little bit to see if it's you could consider it a subset of of an argument from evil or whatever. But it's the idea of and since you've done stuff with like mental health, Like the
Yeah.
idea of like profound mental illness seems to me to be a very specific kind of evil that is hard to account for on standard theodicies. Like people with like delusions, incapable of like knowing what's real and what's because it's like, for me, those kinds of things seem like a lot of normal theodicies don't seem to me to apply to that, like soul building theodicies or like and it's hard to see what greater good could come from like severely undermining somebody's like sense of self and sense of reality and being able to judge like true versus falsity.
Yeah. Well, let me say this. It reminds me of Jesus' own response when people are bringing, he appears in front of, I think it's a guy who's deaf or blind or something like that. Or maybe he's just got no legs. It might be that one, that he's crippled or something. But he heals him, and then the people, the audience around him, they ask, okay, well, what sin has this man done in order to get him in this situation? And he says, no sin. Like, why are you asking that? This has not been done because it's a punishment for whatever he or his parents have done. It's done in order to glorify God. And I think that, especially since that's scriptural, that's an anchor and a starting point for whatever theodicy that we want to build. And I'm not seeing this theodicy as in very many places. You know what I mean? Like, you find the soul building ones, we find the free will building, free will ones, but it's, I don't know what I'd even call this one, but I think I'd start there.
Do you mean in the sense, like, for instance, when the Israelites are being led out of Egypt, God says he's hardening Pharaoh's heart so that he can like show his majesty, basically, or show his like show his power or whatever. Like, that's part of the reason why he wants this to be like a story that is remembered, kind of thing. Are you saying?
Oh, you went blank. I wonder if your phone died, but you're still connected. So, but your audio and visual. There you are. Now you're frozen. There you are.
Yeah. One second. I'll be right back. One second. Let me see. I probably have to go pretty soon. But the reason a lot of theodicies don't seem to make sense to me with this is because, like, because like I said, like, what greater good could come about from? Or we're not frozen, right?
No.
Okay. Like, I mean, especially because sometimes these people have like delusions, like that would be considered like heretical, like religious.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see what possible good it could do for the person, so it's really hard to see.
I'm not sure. I said heretical because I thought you meant hereditary. Unfortunately,
no.
But I don't know. I mean, I see what you mean. They may like believe that they're Jesus, they're son of God. They may like believe this lunacy or something. Yeah. I see what you mean. So, what greater good? I mean, I think answering this question, just go back to that example. It's like, well, the people around who saw that healing, obviously, their faith was increased. I think he also said something. So it's done so that you might glorify God and also that you might believe. So it's this evidence of a miracle. It's evidence of faith. It's evidence of, hey, God still does stuff in this world. And I know that's hard for us to understand because then it's like, well, gosh, why would God mess with people and put them in hard spots just to fix them? It's almost like he's toying with us.
Well, and there's people that like die on the streets, like mentally ill, and like, I don't see why that doesn't. I mean, and it's not like they have some profound control over their situation. I mean, like people with severe mental illness, I mean, they don't even know what reality is barely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to look at like what are people doing around them, that's bringing about God's glory. Let's just go with that explanation. Maybe, you're an atheist. There are other people who are atheists who are listening to this, but let's just go with the explanation that it brings God glory. for them to be helped out of this. And so, well, let's look for those instances. Not everybody's being helped because maybe there's not enough helpers. I mean, again, Jesus said the harvest is ripe, but the workers are few. This may apply to that, so it's not like everybody's being helped. It's not like everybody's faith is increasing. But what about those cases where people are being helped, are being lifted up out of poverty, are being cared for in their mental illness? And then, okay, those instances, look at the effects of that when it happens. Do people's faith increase? Do people have some sort of I don't know, I believe in humanity again? And it does seem like, oh man, I really believe in humanity again. We're not just terrible. You see what I mean? It's like this restoration of hope when it does happen. And I think that's a singular and unique phenomenon. The fact that somebody is in something really difficult bind and they're helped. It's a unique restoration of hope there that you really don't get anywhere else.
But for the person who's unable to make contact with reality, I don't see how that is good. What benefit they get out of this?
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I am assuming cases where they actually do get cared for. They do get, taken off the streets. They get to put a home. They get clothes on their back. So they're being cared for their. You're right. I acknowledge that. I think that more of this should be done. Absolutely, you would agree with me with that. But just for the people who do get help, they're getting their material needs met. But you're wondering, okay, what about their spiritual needs? What about their faith, and so on and so on? I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It just seemed to me a lot of the standard theodicies don't function very well. Like I said, things like soul building, it's hard to see what some people do manage to pull themselves out of it, but especially profound psychosis and stuff. It's not they don't really. It's not like a personal willpower kind of situation.
Yeah.
Where they
but
can.
Anyway, man, we've talked for a long time.
I think
we got to go. But okay, well, it's been really, really pleasant, and come back on anytime. So
yeah, sounds good.
All right, see you next time. Bye.
Thanks.
All right, that was really, really terrific. We've got our next guest, Nathan, here. We're going to bring on, and he's got his camera on. I really love to see that, Nathan. I don't know if we've met yet. Maybe I've seen you in comments, maybe not.
I don't.
But tell us a little bit about yourself, and then what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I'm a newer YouTuber. I have a channel called Ducks Y.
Okay, cool. I see
education, that. Yeah. My education is in political science, and so I sort of got into better philosophy or whatever, doing political theory, and so it's a lot of fun. It's one of those tough things. I'm sure you and probably some people in the audience have been through, being able to sort of keep sort of definitions and stuff super clear and precise is always a little bit of a challenge. But I figured I'd just come up and say what's up. The algorithm recommended you, and
nice. Well, cool,
Dr. Derek. So
yeah, of course, yeah. So you say something about is it political theory, political science? Because I know those aren't the same.
Yeah. And it's weird because a lot of political theory programs are under political science schools.
Yeah.
But so, in undergrad, I did a bunch of stuff, Hobbes through Rousseau, and then kind of got to do that sort of mid 30-year-old kind of going through it again. Interesting stuff. And
nice. So what do you mean go through it again? You went through grad school and all that?
Yeah, no, just going through some of the sort of ideas and stuff, when I was 18, it was I might get wasted, in a week or two.
Of course,
whatever this weekend, I wasn't thinking about what is the ontology and metaphysics of Hobbes or Rousseau, and so.
Man, I tell my students that too, especially the ones who, may not be interested in it, because the ones you get and they're super interested and they buy into it, they know what they're there for and they know why philosophy is important. Love those students. But even the ones who aren't, I'm like, look, you guys are going to want to go back and read this stuff once you get a little bit older. Get 10, 15 years under your belt, or once you retire, all you're going to want to do is read philosophy. in whatever form that takes, or watch philosophy videos, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
It's going to be, those are
Yeah.
the questions you're going to be hunting down because they're still with us.
Yeah, I mean, it's always like one of those questions where it's like, your starting point in philosophy doesn't necessarily matter that much, but when you see sort of the same ideas, like John Searle is a great example of someone who did a lot of what we think of as academic philosophy, and then later in his career drifted into sort of a little more into what social knowledge must be like.
Yeah.
And so those sort of subtle shifts, it's, to me, it started to pull together. It's like, why is there like one big idea versus why is there one big idea with one big opposition against it, or changes a bunch.
Yeah, and that happens too. Like when I was starting out in grad school, this one professor, he did hardcore analytic contemporary epistemology. And he was like, yeah, but I'm also, I totally forgot what his side hobby was. I'm like interested in this other, he was a beekeeper. That was a side hobby, but I mean like academic side hobby. He was like, I'm interested in there's something in ethics. And I was like, well, why don't you start writing in it? He said, well, because, it's going to take me like a decade to learn the literature and then to be conversant and then to like know other people who are also writing in it. And then to like launch that when I'm already proficient and a specialist in this area. But it sounds like some people do it. And you mentioned John Searle, like that's, I think a lot of philosophers are like this, that, they'll do their dissertation, wait 15 years, get tenured and all that, and be like, okay, now I want to like write on what I actually want to write on, not like shackled to or something. Yeah, it's again, like not just students who, do a little bit of philosophy, go back to the drawing board and think about other ideas. It's philosophers do it as well.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, you said something in the chat here. What did you mean by this? This is you, right? Duxby? I love that thing here.
I guess I got to back it up now, don't I? Now that everyone sees it, so
I love the well, I think everybody saw it anyway, but I love the what is that, avatar or whatever it is. That's super cool.
Yeah. Thanks, little grok.
What? Yeah, I love it, man. So what did you first of all, what did you say this in response to? Let's just start with that.
What was it? And sorry, my memory is very short term.
That's all right. I think
being programmed to but it was something regarding like the good works of religion.
Oh,
and
okay,
and I don't want to play like a strict anti-theist role, so maybe this was really reactionary, but to me it's one of those things where when we're talking about justified beliefs for God or something and seeing if religion is producing some form of truth in the world, to me it's always questionable what that belief actually rests on. And so it's one of those weird ideas.
I see what you mean. Yeah. So okay. Yeah. Super interesting. So were you assuming that like I was describing a scenario where people were forming a belief and then the evidence for that belief would be on what they had seen? Like they witnessed, say, a miracle or whatever it may be, and that would be like, okay, that was the kind of scenario I was describing, and I was putting it in terms of faith. But of course, this doesn't expand what the sense of a belief is. But
I would
does
stop you there,
question.
actually. I would
go
stop
ahead.
you there. So, and what I would probably actually consider is that, if someone is observing an increase of charity from religion or something in the world, or they're seeing the beneficial impacts of Christianity, it's like, well, this isn't really how human brains work. This isn't really what a belief is about. You also can look at why do people have that belief? Is it competitive? Is it
I see.
What does that belief required to do or maintain or push away to still be that belief?
I see. So, I mean, what do you mean by competitive? Because I just assume beliefs, if you're going to found it on some evidence, that evidence has got to be good evidence. And maybe we can question whether, them experiencing some charity in the world would be good evidence for that belief. But that it's got to be based on some evidence, and that evidence would then support the belief. But what do you mean by competitive? Do you not hold like what's called the correspondence theory of truth, that like a belief is just true if it corresponds to reality?
I think a correspondence theory of belief is fine. I would also say, here's a sort of like if we imagine belief as like a topology or like, just, something like it's a different type of space. Like if I see an increase of charity and I become more religious because of this, or I see atheists doing good things in the world, same thing, and I become an atheist because of this. If I'm ignoring the actual sociological drivers or psychological drivers of why that was the case in the first place, then in normal cases we can say, well, there's some justifiable belief. It's maybe not rock solid, but it fits it fits the bill of goods.
Or maybe it is.
or maybe yeah.
Yeah, so let's put it this way. So like if I had a belief that I don't know, let's just say the Danish people were just terrible people, right? Like, but then I started to see some Danish people who were like doing these works of charity, being really nice people to me. Every Danish person they were on, like, suddenly was like really kind to me and so on. I would then come to form at least the belief that Danish people were not so bad. Okay, then I could start to ask myself, okay, I'm not a Danish believer yet, or believe in whatever they believe. What do they believe in? Then I can ask myself, well, what makes them nice people? And that would get me to think about their principles, like their principles of society. Like Americans have certain principles and founding principles and so on, political principles, as you well know. And so what enables them to have those sort of things? So then that may get me, because of my contact with them and knowing that they're not so bad, would get me to start to examine the principles and then think, okay, maybe some of those principles are actually worth looking into, and then maybe even worth buying into. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so it's interesting, to imagine, what sounds like sort of, it could be either, sorry, this is my political theory brain sort of not getting it, but it sounds interesting to almost have a meta-ethical discussion or something that's leading to something that sounds like it almost starts as like a stance-dependent belief and then becomes almost stance-independent. Like, I don't want to generalize an observation about some tribe or group of people, but I do want to generalize the moral principles that I've then considered and thought more about.
Of course.
And
do you think there's something wrong in that inference?
No, not on the surface. It just it might not, I think the meaning of it would always be, I get this sort of a little bit, but I think the meaning of it would be difficult to sort of ascertain. It could just be that, like guys like Lance Independent, might say, well, the meaning, the meaning might not be that difficult. It's like, well, you observed and experienced and reasoned about these things, and so now you hold this belief. And to me, it's still like one of those questions where it's like, well, is the world actually a certain way in, for the reasons that you've sort of brought out of this experience?
Yeah.
That would, and so I struggle with that because I don't have a firm lily pad or a place to land on it.
Yeah. So first of all, I love Lance. We've had a couple conversations, and he's great. He sometimes even drops into the chats here on my lives, but really, really great guy. I learn a ton from him because he's super, super sharp.
I'm on his Discord. He's cool.
Yeah, he knows this meta-ethical space a lot better than I do. I'm just an amateur when it comes to like educated amateur when it comes to. So yeah, I really appreciate him. But back to the idea, like to be clear, in the scenario I just described with Danish people, it's not that I can go onto their principles and find those principles worthy of consideration and then worthy of belief. It's not that my evidence only remains just a singular isolated incident because Danish people were nice to me. It's going to build, like, it's going to be, okay, well, I want to learn about that's, I try to build that into the case, but like, I'm learning not just based on this initial evidence, but I'm gaining evidence. And I think like going from, say, the stance dependent to these more universal objective principles, let's say, I think there would be an easier transition because you're gaining more evidence. And now, but I think it also is worth describing this way because I got introduced to those principles from those people. And that's what led me to at least consider them like worthy of consideration, if that makes sense. But my evidence is not going to just stay the same. And I'm only, I hope that was obvious. Like, I'm not only believing these principles just because of that singular incident.
To me, that's a really interesting problem or challenge, right? Because I would want to believe and I would want to live in a world where Nathan and Dr. Derek could have a conversation. You teach me all about what you learned from the Danish, and together we agree that, wow, there is some objective morality here. But it's like, why is it the case that the world produces these sort of generalizable, I would say generalizable claims that aren't part of a theory or something? It's like, well, the world doesn't, I don't think the world works in this way where you have objective truths and there's not some theory that describes them. Because then, you run into those meta-philosophical problems where it's like, I just don't know what you're talking about, or I don't know.
Man, somebody just said this: abduction to induction to deduction. I don't know what the arrows mean, but I could just presume that this is a good way for it, at least methodologically, starting with inference to the best explanation, abduction, and then that leads you to induction, which is like, based on cause and effect, empirical stuff, and then deduction. So, I mean, I don't know if this, but it's almost like a narrowing of the funnel to like get to these more precise principles and so on by deduction. But I think it's like there's order of dependence in learning. That would be the funnel. But there might be also a different order, reverse order here, an order of dependence in terms of what comes like logically prior or something. Obviously, these people have to have good principles in order to act the way they do and so on. But yeah, anyway, your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, it's really useful. And it's also, not to be too internet, too 2025 and woke, but it's like, yeah, why not, but yeah, there's some people who just have more intuitive or experiential sort of based worldviews. And so it's cool to make an inference. Yeah. And, but it's also like, if you teach me about John Stuart Mill and I can intuit that utilitarianism has some sort of merit on the basis of it's just utilitarianism. It seems and feels a little bit more correct. It's like, well, if it turns out in 200 years that bucket of evidence stuck around, then maybe I'm not doing an Oxford debate talking about how the first time I read John Stuart Mill, it lit my soul on fire. Yeah. But I can still use those same sort of initial arguments. And so it's a cool way to think about it, whatever works. It's probably a cool way to explore the fullness of an idea, but I wouldn't like recommend that or push that on someone that didn't want to.
Yeah. You mentioned something briefly time ago about systems. I guess you were kind of contrasting the sort of individualized principles that were apart from their systems. And it seemed to, at least when I was hearing it, seemed to have a concern that you could have these individualized principles that stand alone, but then like what you would really be after, it seemed like what I was speaking of for you, you can correct me, but what you would really be after would be like the systems. Why is that? Do you think like there's more credibility in having a system that like works all this stuff out? I think I would agree with you if you wanted to go that way, like more coherence. And then it's like, maybe I don't believe everything the system says, let's say, but like, at least it's been around for a while. It's been time tested. Like, yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with basically everything you said. I might be someone that would argue that, well, okay, so intuitively, if it is the case that I can explain something, if there's more explanatory power, because it's part of a system, well, there's something useful about the way that we're using concepts and categories, or the way that language is able to apply. And there's, it's like, yeah, if we sort of cut the sort of, cut the BS and say, there's 2 or 3 reasons I believe this type of moral claim, and so like, shouldn't it then be the case that, well, like, it's like, yeah, if we're going to have a conversation, cool, but maybe the greatest sin is having a system that doesn't sort of generalize or doesn't stick. That's,
the interesting thing also about morality is that a good piece of evidence, a good testament of the morality is in its lived out experience. So moral principles, maybe even political principles. I consider political philosophy just a branch. I consider it like ethics writ large, really, because it's like the good the public good, the social good, which is like good for the polis, good for the society.
Totally.
I mean, there's different things that happen once you get a bunch of people together, collective. But yeah, so it would include political principles as well. But I think that they're a testament and an evidence to themselves when they're lived out and when they're lived out well. And I think this is why it's such a damning criticism of religious people who don't adhere to their ethical principles. And it may also, like, you can throw in religious principles there as well, as long as it's like religious ethical. But yeah, like that's what bothers non-believers so much, I think, is because here are people who have certain principles that at least confess to or should adhere to because in name they're nominally Christian or so on, but yet they aren't living this out. It's not an evidence to them, and so it seems to be evidence against them. And so yeah, you get to like these puzzling sort of scenarios there.
Yeah. So that, I think that's true. That's maybe like, you said you're sort of you're a novice meta ethics. I'd be way more novice in this sense. Yeah. The thing that I think is sort of valuable is in the sense that if you're skipping the granularity route and you're just going from a system in the first place and you just sort of accept a system intuitively, well, you already have two conversations. You can without learning about the Danish. Without learning about the Danish, I can already hear or listen to. I can already sort of think of like almost like either a Bayesian or whatever the world must be like, right? I can think what the world must be like. I think of what the world can be like, and I can say that, well, already we have a very limited toolkit, but it's the toolkit we have to sort of see if the system is right. Without even deconstructing or reconstructing what those beliefs themselves must be like.
Yeah, man, I love this high level discussion. It's like stretching me and pushing me. But it's really.
I'll say, I can't agree with anything. I'll tell you, that's my personality. Is like.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah,
I'll try to
I'm
be
used
nice,
to it.
but I don't. Yeah. So
I love it. It's funny. What helps also is like when we get like analogies, like I mentioned, and then examples. I think especially like to external observer or listener, they're just going to hear us talking about abstract concepts and principles and like not follow along. So yeah, It helps always when you're like, oh, I mean, and such as this, and I mean this, and take this for example, and so on. Of course, like if you're using analogies, no analogy is perfect. That's why they're called analogies. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
That's
but
cool.
We've got Go ahead.
Yeah.
I want you to speak here, but we'll wrap up, and then I'll let you have the last word if you don't mind. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll say something very quickly. It's to me like I run a lot, and so to me it's like that feeling when your foot hits the dirt, and you know that like if you tell me a moral statement or something, and I know that when I put pressure on it, the dirt's going to sort of spread out some way underneath my foot, even if it's not totally matched up or whatever it is. That's what I think of as being introduced to a theory. It's not that there's not some deterministic or objective way that the world might be. It's not that there isn't a very suitable and perhaps best subjective description. It's just that I only know that there's some form of chaos underneath it.
Yeah.
And it's like nihilism, I guess, but
Yeah. I mean, I think, are you a nihilist?
I'm by convention or force. I'm 10% nihilist 10% of the time.
Oh, okay.
But other than that, I typically subscribe that what we think of as knowledge, like all of philosophy, is usually about an objective version of reality with correspondence. I don't think I don't think like having particle systems or events and fundamental objects or whatever it is. I don't think like having a probabilistic universe changes that what knowledge is about, because when has it? When has it been like that? It's only when you talk about it.
Got you. Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, golly, you like really push me on some things, and I'll have to go back and think about this. I actually rewatch these live streams a lot of time. Like you say, you're a runner. I'm a walker. I don't have a runner's. I don't have a runner's physique, but yeah, I try to get them in. I'm probably doing less than I need to now, but yeah. and I'll like often just like go and re-listen to these. So yours is one that I'm definitely going to want to go back through. But man, it's been a real pleasure having you, and I hope you come back.
Yeah, I subscribed, and if
Awesome,
you guys ever end up doing debates, I'll see you again. Take care.
All right, take care. See you. Bye. So I'll bring our next guest on here in a sec, but just a reminder, I don't do debates. I don't know if that's a disappointment to anybody. It may be, but like I say in the description of this video, I don't debate. I discuss. That's what this is all about. And maybe I get 10 years under my belt and I learn more about debating, because it is a mastered skill. And right now I don't have a desire to learn it, but maybe someday. I want to answer to this real quick, and then I'll bring in our next guest. But Leo G says, this is actually, as far as I know, a pretty accurate statistics about philosophers in general. This was, I think, based on probably the 2025 Phil Papers survey, which is professional philosophers. They believe in God or not. Atheism, 72% of them believe in, well, they were atheists, 14% theists, and other, and so on and so on. So this actually is a misleading statistic, believe it or not, Leo. I don't know if you're still there, but I encourage you to go look up the statistic of philosophers of religion who believe in God, and it is significantly higher. I think it's something, if you take all philosophers as a whole, which is what this is doing, all philosophers as a whole, but this includes like feminist philosophy, environmental philosophy, all kinds of things that have just no bearing on God's existence, per se, epistemology and so on. So this would include all philosophy, people who are atheists, and this may be professional or societal pressures or whatever. But when you ask, okay, philosophers of religion who specialize in arguments for God's existence and the rationality of religious belief and all that, know all those arguments front and back, how many of them are theists? And I think it's around 62, 65% or something like that. And it's significantly, so it's a misleading statistic. When you get to that subset of philosophers who actually do know the arguments front and back, the numbers go way, way, way up. Okay, so we're going to bring our next guest here. And I'm actually going to bring in Objective Ethics, because he's been waiting a little longer. And so how are you doing? I know you were here last time, and you didn't have your video on. That's all right, because you were a little under the weather or recovering or something like that from something. But can you hear us okay?
Yeah, brother, I got you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. All right, how you doing, and what do you want to talk about?
No, my recovery is going all right. The doctor said anywhere from 2 months to a year. It's a really crazy.
Oh, gosh.
I know. But I had my final surgery, which is the good news. So they don't expect me I'm going to have to go back under the knife or anything. It's just a matter of just my body acclimating. They rebuilt my GI tract, which is amazing what we could do with all that science. So it's really amazing.
It is amazing.
But my body has to essentially retrain all the muscles and all the functions and everything. Is pretty wild.
Gosh.
But at any rate, no, I appreciate your concern. I do have a serious question to ask, but I feel like, I should defend, my belief system, which I am, fully committed to, that the maximally great pizza must include pineapple. And anybody who disagrees with that is a heretic. And I'm just going to put that out there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I don't have a problem with, pineapple on pizza. I'm actually, hot take here. I'm not that disgusted. I think somebody posted on this on X, Twitter, the other day. They said they put a picture of pineapple and ham, Canadian bacon is what we call it, on pizza, and they said that you've been misled by Big Pizza or whatever it is, to dislike pineapple. But I think that's probably true. It's become like a meme. It's like, you hate Nickelback because everybody hates Nickelback. It's like one of those things. Like, you just hate pineapple. I don't think it's that bad. I don't have a problem with it at all. I mean, I wouldn't probably go out and buy it. It's not my number one, so I'm always going to buy my number one, which is probably like a Meat Lovers or something. We have a really nice place here that does Indian food pizza, which is like you get palak paneer or you get shahi paneer on it. It's freaking amazing. But if it's bought for a crowd, I would have a slice. I have no problem with pineapple on pizza.
Well, it's baby steps. We're going to invite you to a few meetings. We'll get you to say a few things, before you know it, you'll be fully converted.
Yeah.
No, but on a serious note, no, I didn't catch all the conversations because I was actually having lunch. So I don't want to retread over, stuff that's already been well established. But the issue that I have And the reason I tend to bring up some of these alternative explanations for that, when you talk about the ontological, modal ontological arguments or tag or anything like these are presuppositional. Problem I have with these, and I think that this is where the substitution method really exposes it, is that when we start ascribing these attributes, these maximally great attributes, it becomes entirely subjective at that point. You know, it's very speculative in my opinion. And and to give an example, so let's take the Christian paradigm for example, because we're here in America, or at least I am, and I assume you are as well. And that's our biggest, so that's what we have to work with here. And in the Christian paradigm, when the Christians are making, like I debate things on the Think Institute sometimes with those guys, and they talk about, you know, the triune God is the only God that checks all the boxes, you know. But a skeptic is going to look at this and say, okay, well, what's your source material for this? And of course, it all goes back to the Bible. You know, you have the church fathers and people arguing about that, but the source material has to go back to the oldest, which is going to be coming out of the Bible. Yeah. Okay, so when a skeptic is looking at these things, and I as a skeptic can say, based on my subjective worldview, SA against women and anybody else for that matter is always wrong. There's no exceptions. Punishing one person for somebody else's mistakes is always wrong. There's no exceptions. And I could say that confidently and say that's what I base morality on. And I know that in principle and in practice, so does most people do as well, even Christians. They say, hey, I would never want to punish somebody for somebody else's behaviors and stuff. But then when you say, well, look at the stories, the narratives as they're presented in the Bible, especially when you start with the Old Testament. And I mean, God is whacking babies left and right. He's punishing people for other people's sins. You know, David's wives get essayed by Absalom. You've got the fall. We're all punished because Adam and Eve. I mean, there's none of this morality that we're talking about right now. And so then you say, well, what about all this? And the Christians say, well, God's morality is objective. It's above everything else. And so at that point, you're just basically, they're making the rules. And then it's called a special pleading fallacy, technically is what it is. You know, you're saying, well, it's wrong for us to do these things. And that's true. But we're going to give God the free pass because it's our maximally great being, and God is objective and God knows everything. And so we can't say that it's wrong for God to kill babies. You know, it's like, wait a minute, what is going on here? You know, is
it special pleading? Why is it special pleading?
Well, because when you're going to say something is wrong in all circumstances, until it comes to a circumstance I'm not comfortable with, then I'm going to change the rules.
Does the Bible say that it's wrong in all circumstances?
I didn't say the Bible did, but I say that. And I know Christians would as well, up until it gets to the Bible.
Well, here's why I'm asking this, is because the commands in the Bible, let's just take murder. The command is thou shalt not murder. Okay? Does it say the murder is wrong in every circumstance? I mean, it seems like it. It seems like that's implying, but it's not logically identical claims. First of all, the first claim is a command, so it's not really a proposition. Thou shalt not murder. Okay, well, who's that command directed towards? Because it's an imperative. Imperative towards who? Well, it's to first, primarily the Israelites, and secondarily, generalizing, it's to all humanity. But that's important. It's to humans. God never says that he's not going to do these things. In fact, should he be held accountable for transgressing one of his own commands? Because, well, only if those commands were meant for him. Were they meant for him? Let me ask you this, do you think God's commands were meant for himself?
I don't think that's relative, or I don't think that's relative, because whether or not, so if I tell my children, you know, you can't beat people up, you can't go punch somebody in the nose, okay? And then I walk outside and I punch my neighbor in the nose. You know, does that mean that I have some moral high ground simply because my commands to my children I never intended to apply to myself?
Well, that's an analogy, but as with all analogies, as I said earlier, they're imperfect by nature because they're analogous. You're describing a situation where it's a human giving a command to a human, not a God giving a command to a human. So there's a huge disanalogy here, right? So when God gives a command, and I'll go back to the question, well, you said it's not relevant. Well, I think it is relevant. Should God follow his own commands? Or more fundamental question is, when he gives this command, was it meant for himself? And I don't think it is at all. Like, let's just take a couple examples. Honor thy father and mother. How's God gonna fulfill that command? have no other graven images. Like why would God make idols and worship them when he alone, is higher than, more sovereign than, or do not covet. Well, covet implies lack, because I have to lack something in order to covet it, and God can't covet things because he doesn't lack anything. So like just by definition, or anything like adultery, like who's God going to cheat on? You see what I mean? Like, and he doesn't have a body, or any of these like ritual purity laws. Like how's God going to follow those? So it's like, you have to understand that these laws these were given to humans. And so I think it's a understandable initial criticism to look at God and say, well, you're not following these commands. But once you understand that, like, were they commands originally meant for God to follow? I mean, wrestle with that question first, and then I think you get some clarity on these issues.
I certainly understand where you're coming from. I disagree with the premise. It's that you're basically saying that God is something that God is actually outside of. So God is moral, even though God has no attachment to any morality.
What do you mean I have no attachment to any morality?
Because you're just saying there's no judge of God's behaviors. No, the implication is that God can murder people. Yeah, God can go ahead and murder anybody God wants. God can, by your logic here, if I follow you out, God can commit SA, God can commit murder, God can do the most horrific things, and you are required to say that that's morally good based on your worldview.
No, I'm required not to say that it's morally good, but I'm here to challenge whether it's actually murder.
But we're talking about, is it morally good or not? Ethically speaking, the morals. If
well, you're asking whether God's maximally. No, you're asking whether God's murder of, let's say, genocide of whoever, right? The Ammonites, let's take that for example. Whether that was morally good or not. I'm saying, well, let's question whether it's actually murder or whether it's actually genocide. Like, was it, by definition, can it be murder? Well, I mean, it looks on the surface like it is, but again, God is, the problem comes when, as an atheist, I think that God is just like us. He's just another, like, you have to really broaden your understanding. And of course, the pushback is going to be, oh, well, that's special pleading. Well, I mean, you can push back on that, but I mean, don't you want to address the issue of the actual Christian view? And if you want to address the actual Christian view, you have to wrestle with the actual Christian view, not wrestle with some straw man of it. So the actual Christian view is that God is not like us. God's not just another thing in the universe. He's not just another object in the universe or another person or certainly not another human. If he were another human, then taking a human life, of an innocent life, would be murder. But if he's not anything like humans, and the Bible's very clear on this, then taking of an innocent life, well, first of all, who is innocent in God's eyes? Really pure, truly innocent. And does God have the authority to take that life? Well, he's the one who gave the life. So if he gives the life, he can take the life up, which he does all the time. He gives life and he takes life all the time. So in that picture, it's not murder that God does, it's taking up life. Or taking a life, however you want to phrase it, but it's taking a life, sure, but it's not, I think only humans can murder. I don't think dogs can murder. I don't think chimpanzees or tigers or lions can murder. Only humans can murder. Same with God. God can't murder, per se. Like, that's just a uniquely human action.
Well, I would actually disagree. I think that animals can murder to a certain degree. I mean, I understand there's killings they do that are based on territory and things of this nature, and I think that essentially would fall into the category of how we would define murder. One of the many ways we could define murder for humans. So, people say, well, deaths in war aren't actually murder, but I think that's a cop-out personally. I think when you go to somebody else's country and you start killing them, it gets really sticky. What is actually murder? That's a whole nother debate to have about what murder is. But I do think that it is special pleading, and I think that's also involves things like hypocrisy. So if I tell somebody to do something and I'm not willing to play by my own rules, then it's hypocrisy. There's a number of different things that we can attribute to these claims. Now, if I want to do an exegesis and I want to step into the Christian paradigm and say, oh, well, let's go ahead and, argue about a definition that we're both going to just generally accept on premise, which is then the presupposition of it, then what you have is you have all the internal dissension. So you have Catholics arguing with Christians who are arguing with Mormons who are, you guys are all fighting amongst yourselves and going at each other's throats because you all have this basic common understanding or common belief to a certain degree that, oh, we've got this God that's outside of morality. And so that's for you guys to parse out. But the skeptic is not required to look at this whole mess and say, that's really ridiculous, you guys. This is ridiculous because you're special pleading and you don't apply these same definitions to the entire world that you do to your God. You've set him apart from all this, but then you're going to say that he can transcend into this so that his behaviors he can behave and interact with the world that this morality is structured for, but he's not actually tied to any of this morality. And there's just so many fallacies that come along with that. And I can step into your paradigm and we can debate those different, ideas about, is there a Trinity or, there's different things of that nature and have these discussions. But if we're going to if you're going to actually step into the skeptic's paradigm, right? Because it's a two-way street, and you're going to say, you know what? Let me take off my Christian hat here for a second, or my Muslim hat, or whatever, and let's step into the skeptic's paradigm. I think you have to admit that you would say, you know what? Yeah, these people are setting up the rules in such a way that they really can't be beaten. So I'm having a debate right now on another Christian, Discord channel. And we've been discussing different things. So we're going to go through historical errors in the Bible, scientific errors in the Bible, and then contradictions in the Bible. And we're getting to scientific errors in the Bible. We're trying to set ground rules for the debate. And they've automatically set up the debate that any scientific theory doesn't qualify. So you can't match scientific theories up to what the claims in the Bible are because they don't trust science, quote unquote. So they're establishing the rules that they already, the way they're setting up, they can't lose the argument. Because anytime there's going to be a contradiction with science in the Bible, they're going to do one of two things. Either one, they're going to claim a miracle, at which stops the conversation, or they're going to say, well, we don't trust science. So evolution is a quack theory and all these crazy things that they say. So you see what I'm saying? So when you're setting up all the rules to where you can't lose, then why would the skeptic even engage?
So you mentioned there at the beginning, you said a lot there. So you said that it seems like God's not playing to his own rule, according to his own rules. I don't think those are God's rules for him to play by. It's almost like blaming an NFL referee for not playing according to the NFL game rules. Like, he's not trying to play according to the rules. Like, it seems like a really silly criticism once you realize that that's not what he's supposed to be doing.
You're acting as though the referee can just run in there and grab the ball from when they're getting ready to snap it, and he can run down and slam it in the ground and say touchdown and start doing the touchdown.
The referee is the enforcer of the rules.
Yeah, exactly.
The referee is the enforcer of the rules. You have God who's the enforcer.
Yeah, but the difference there, brother, is the referee doesn't play the game.
He ejects people from the game. He ejects people from the game. That would be the analogy here that I say. Like, wouldn't that be a grave injustice to see a player just, boom, plucked off the face of the earth, or in this case, the game? Well, that's what God's doing. He's ejecting people, which seems really unfair, doesn't it?
The referee does not play the game. He can eject people.
Right.
That's not the same thing as playing the game. The referee doesn't commit a foul.
He doesn't play the game.
He doesn't carry the ball. He can't commit a personal foul because he doesn't tackle people.
Exactly.
So all the rules he's enforcing, he doesn't actually engage in that behavior.
You're starting to get it. Yes.
But God engages in the behavior. That's the difference here. God actually does tackle people. He does hit him from behind. He does take off his helmet and headbutt people. And he breaks all the rules. What are you talking about? Because you're talking about referee at football.
No, I understand. I understand the analogy, but God doesn't actually. That's what I'm saying. Like, you're as silly as you're describing the referee tackling people, engaging, throwing the ball and doing all this. That's what I'm supposing. What I'm suggesting. What I'm proposing is as silly as saying that God's breaking the rules, like killing people. That's the silly analogy that we're proposing here. Like, you saying God's breaking the rules is as silly as a referee going and doing all those things. That's not what a referee is supposed to be doing, and that's not what God's doing. He's not playing the game as a character or a player in the game. That's not the way the world's set up. He's the enforcer of the rules.
But the difference is here, you're saying that we are both agreeing that God is actually engaging in the behaviors that he is enforcing.
No, I'm not agreeing to that.
God is killing people, whether you call it murder or not. God is ending people's
lives. In the analogy, he's ejecting people. which is within, as an NFL right, as NFL ref in the analogy, it is within the authority of that NFL referee to do that. But he's not playing the game according to the rules of them. Like, could a player, let's say, harm another player so that player never returns to the game? Yeah, and it would be a violation of the rules. So that would be like murder, let's say. That's not what the referee's doing.
Exactly, but God is harming people. The referee's not there harming people. The referee's not handling the ball. The referee is not.
Yeah, okay, I agree. Okay, I agree with you that the referee is harming people, but that's a very generic statement. It's a very general statement. So the referee is harming people by ejecting people. He's harming people by enforcing the rules. In the same way that
not harming people. He's not harming people. The God is harming
people. He is harming people. He's harming an outcome of the game when he makes a certain call. He's harming a player's chance at maybe getting some, I don't know, contract stipulation, some rider in their contract that, I was supposed to get 100 yards this game. So he's harming that person in that way. So yeah. God is harming people, sure, and people harm people, but they don't do it in the same way. Like a player can harm another person, can harm his chances, can shut down an offense, let's say, and a referee can eject a person and can harm a player in that sense, but they're not harming them in the same way.
I think you're making a false analogy, a false equivalency here, because again, the referee is not engaging in the behaviors itself. The referee is monitoring the behaviors. The referee is actually an objective source there because they're not engaging in the actual game. God is, according to the narrative, actually engaging in the game. He is hardening hearts. Okay, he's calling people to come to him. Okay, he's essentially forcing people to do his bidding. It's a very deterministic God that you get, especially the Old Testament. So this God is interacting and by playing in the game, interacting in the game. The referee's not doing that. The referee is outside of the game. That's what makes it objective.
And that's what makes the analogy fails ultimately, as all analogies do at some point.
Yeah, but
because
you're the one who brought
again,
up the referee,
hold on, didn't let me finish. Because again, I go back to the idea that if we think of God just as another thing in the universe, just he's breaking his own rule. Yeah, sure, man. If you want to think of God as like a mythological god, like of a Greek pantheon or something, I would be right on board with you in saying that what he's doing is wrong and he's playing the game and he's violating his own rules and so on, because he's another thing present in the universe full of things, right? The Christian God is not a thing in a universe full of things. He is the ground of all reality. He is absolute being itself. And if you want to wrestle with the actual Christian theological view of God, you have to understand that. Otherwise, anything else is a straw man.
No, I could substitute Ahura Mazda, for example. There's a number of religions that have the same concept of this God that's outside time and space, that's the creator of all things. So the Judeo-Christian God, the triune God, is not anything unique in a particular worldview. This is actually something that's been developed being influenced by other worldviews. And, I think the history and the
that's shows that. You know what? That's 100% fine with me if you want to also do that. And then we can compare the merits of those theological systems against each other. That's fine. But at least you're making progress in realizing that we're talking about not an object in a universe full of objects, not a person in a universe full of persons. We're not talking about another human being. We're talking about ground of all reality and ultimate being, absolute being. So sure, this gets referred to tangentially or directly in other religions. That's fine. And then, but at least you're starting to capture what I'm meaning here. And then, okay, if you want to talk about Ahura Mazda, if you want to talk about Zoroastrianism, whatever, then we can compare the merits of those two religions independently. We can say, okay, now how do they fare against each other? But now, at least I'm having a correct understanding of what those religions teach, and not just proposing a straw man that people don't actually believe.
Interesting. Well, I think your analogy of the referee was exposes the problems, but it is a pretty ridiculous analogy. I don't think it relates at all. It was your analogy. I didn't bring it up. That was what you brought to the table.
I didn't mean to say that the analogy is completely useless, but I do think, like all analogies, it does, eventually, as this one does, it eventually breaks down. All analogies do. If analogies don't eventually break down at some point, then they wouldn't be analogies at all. They would be identical to the thing they're trying to describe, and it would just be the same thing. So that's the nature of an analogy, to break down at some point. So I think all analogies, by definition, are just imperfect. They're just not going to capture entirely the thing they're trying to describe, because it's not the thing they're trying to describe.
No, I do appreciate that, and that's where it becomes definitional, and that's the flaw of it. Ultimately, is that the definitions are all subjective, and I wouldn't go as far as to say they're arbitrary, because that's not fair, but certainly subjective and randomized depending on who you're talking about, because we're all individuals, and every individual is going to ultimately have a different idea when it comes down to, if we could have some kind of, and maybe we'll get there someday, where you could plug your brain into a computer and images will come up on a screen somewhere, we would find out that every single thing when I say red, you and I are going to both think the color red, and it's not going to be anything remotely the same. It'll be some version of red probably, unless one of us is colorblind, but I might have a dark red, you might have a lighter red, you know what I'm saying? So this is true in all things, because all of our minds, as far as I know anyway, are completely independent and unique.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you there, but I think I'd be cautious to stress the differences over the similarities, and I don't think that all definitions are inherently subjective. Maybe you do, but I don't. Let's just take the word definition. Is that inherently subjective? Well, no. I think we have really precise parameters for what a definition is, and if you look in logic, there's about 8 or 9 senses of or kinds, let's say, of definitions. Only one of which is a verbal definition or a linguistic definition that's like we would find in a dictionary. So most people are going to just think of dictionary, but there's an other kind of definition. But anyway, all that say, I don't think all definitions are subjective. I think that once you start to peel back layers of what people are talking about, like you said, you get to these like core understandings of what people are talking about. And if you want to say, okay, well, the ideas are subjective, or the idea, I think ideas, ultimately, I think, yeah, we can be confused in our ideas, and we can have, I don't know, misunderstandings and internal conflict in our idea sets all the time. That's totally fine. And maybe that's what's driving a lot of confusion, to make people think that all definitions are just subjective. But I think once you get clarity on what ideas you're actually trying to pin down, what ideas you're actually locating, identifying, and talking about, then I think that subjectivity just disappears, because you can find common ground.
Well, I do think there are certain, what we would call immutable facts, for example. So there are things that simply are, irregardless of how we define them. Mathematics is a beautiful language that we use to define a very specific thing that is. However, the language itself is technically subjective. It's arbitrary to a certain degree. It's how we apply it that as you say, as we start to kind of boil it down to what it actually represents, that's when we start to get into the objective truth of things. And as far as I know, there are very few actual objective truths. Now, you and I would disagree probably on what is an objective truth, because you're probably going to, in your worldview, include certain elements of a god or a religion, and that's perfectly fine for you, brother. I don't discredit you or anybody else for doing that. It's just completely different. In my paradigm, none of that is necessary. I haven't been, shown any reason why it would need to be necessary to do that. But I do think that we could agree there are at least some immutable facts out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there. That's our common ground. That I do think there are some immutable facts out there. I think there's some objective facts out there. I don't think that you need to appeal to God to get some of these objective facts, like mathematical truths. I don't have to appeal to God to tell you that mathematical truths are, certain, and that we can be certain about them and that they are objective. Same thing with logical truths. Same things with Descartes' proposition, I think, therefore I am. Like all those things, like I don't need to appeal to God to maybe to ground those truths, but in order to identify as which ones are objective versus which ones are subjective, I don't need to appeal to God for that.
Well, listen, I always enjoy talking to you and other people who are a lot smarter than I am, because it helps me out, to try and get to your guys' level. But I don't want to be respectful to other people in the chat. I did want to just wrap up by saying one thing. You mentioned my name last time we talked. You want to get a handle on what objective ethics is all about. And I do have, I'm actually in the process of, even though I am a skeptic, I am in the process of developing a theory about objective ethics and objective quote unquote morality. And
I'd love for you to come back and talk about that. Yeah. Because I think you're not the only one. I think another guy, Elijah Moore, has been on here, and he is also trying to find. He's a fan of Lance, had him on his channel, interviewed him, and so on. But yeah, he is also trying to develop something. That's something we've talked about on live streams like this. He's come on and been like, okay, here's where I am, and here's where my theory is, and I'm like, okay, well that works, but this doesn't, and so on. So yeah, come back, please. Let's talk about that.
I'd love to bounce. It's all philosophical approach at this point, obviously. You know what I mean? It's a teleological kind of a concept, and so I'd love to bounce some things off of you as a philosopher, and just see kind of, you know, especially given the fact that in your worldview, it's certainly possible, you know, to have objective morality, even if we ground it in different things, you know what I mean? So I'd love to bounce this off of you and see, because as a skeptic, I'm definitely going to be in the minority here, but I really appreciate your time, and to all the guests for waiting and letting me have so much of your time.
Of course. Yeah. I really appreciate you. So come back anytime, and I'll take care. Okay.
All right, brother. Be good.
All right. You too. Bye. All right. That was really pleasant. So we have a few minutes over, but I do want to take a look at some of these chats. So I don't always get to the chat. So okay, so Christians need to acknowledge the horrific implications of what they're attempting to defend. I absolutely acknowledge the horrific implications of what I'm attempting to defend. I wonder if atheists will do the same. You don't say what those implications are, so I don't have to say what those implications are for atheists. Brenda debates. I don't know how you found this channel. Thanks for being here. But I say I don't know how you found this channel because I don't do debates. Apparently you do. I really like the avatar though. God is not a person now. I don't know. I hope you didn't see my or hear anything I said and then came to this conclusion, because I never said anything like God's not a person. Ground of all reality, meaningless phrase with no referent in the world that it points to. For this, I do often say that God is absolute being and the ground of all reality. So I absolutely do think this has a referent, and I've recommended before these couple books on Thomistic metaphysics. It's really heady stuff. Involves transcendentals and ontology and so on. If you want some heavy reading and you want to try to understand what Thomistic philosophy says about God in order to explain God as being the ground of all reality, that's the place I would look. So obviously look in Aquinas himself, but I'll get those books here. I think they're just right here. Yep. Okay, I've shown these before, but one of them is Introduction to the Metaphysics of St. Thomas Aquinas by James F. Anderson. These are all actual primary sources. So you're actually reading from Aquinas. It's not only the Summa, but it's other things like, De Veritate, De Malo, on truth, on evil, and so on and so on. So it's a really fantastic resource. And this would be the primary source, like source of all the material that he talks about in metaphysics, transcendentals, and so on. This is a secondary source, the one in the many, Contemporary Thomistic Metaphysics by W. Norris Clark. I mentioned this one before as well, and some people have even reported back that they've gotten the book. These are pretty affordable. I'll show you that one again. The one in the many by W. Norris Clark. And I don't agree with everything this guy says, but in his analysis of like an additional transcendental, he thinks that the classical transcendentals are things like being, truth, unity, or oneness. And then later developments include things like beauty. But he adds an extra transcendental in there called activity. And I'm like, I don't know about that. All being is active is what he's proposing. So he says it's inherent in Aquinas' account. So anyway, if that interests you, and help unfold what I mean when I say something like God is absolute being, well, look up the chapter on being as a transcendental and what that actually means. And then, and these chapters are arranged in both books according to the transcendentals. So just find the chapter that involves transcendentals, find the chapter that involves transcendental on being, and then read. So it certainly does have referent. All right. Okay, math. So it says here, once dictionary is published, it's out of date. Also, its language is always changing. That's an interesting fact. Yeah. So X Music, he says he's a linguist. So that's an interesting sort of observation. Math works, not truths. I think math works is a true proposition. So I don't know what you mean by that. Meanwhile, we have laws. Laws are descriptions of the way that things are in the world. Laws are just descriptions. Chatting too much, we need more chatters. I'm fine with the way you chat, man. I'm glad that you're here. Subjective Ethics back on says, Brenda, heard you debate and you're very intelligent. Loved hearing you speak. So I've not heard of Brenda before, but I'm glad that she's here. And then we just short Adam, the Flat Earther, King James, Onlyist. I laugh so hard. Well, I could do that. Just invite me. Like, if that's all debating takes, to be honest, not take away from Brenda at all. But yeah, if you put me up, like, it's not a topic I'm interested in, but if you put me up against somebody like that, KJV, Flat Earther, then I think pretty much anybody can do well against that. I also heard you timing against during Toon's debate against Flat Earthers. Very scary that there are people who continue to push that insanity. I've got family members who are Flat Earthers and moon landing deniers. They believe in the ice wall and all that stuff, man. It's pretty weird. It's pretty weird. It's pretty weird to know that there are people walking around here who believe that. It's weird, but it's also very interesting and insightful because, like, I got into that stuff, into conspiracy theories, not as a believer, but as an external observer, because I had an interest in epistemology. This is also why I started watching like true crime shows and detective shows and forensic files and New Detectives and all that. CSI even, Mind Hunters, learning all that stuff, man. Because I wanted to get into the mind of people, like, how could you believe these certain things? Same thing with the conspiracy theories. How could people, cults as well, like, how could people come to believe these things? And it's really got me it got me a really unique perspective on evidence and the way that it works, the way it can support things. Conspiracy theorists all obviously have a lot of evidence for their views, and that evidence supports their view, but the evidence itself is bad quality. But anyway, a lot more I can say about that. Maybe I'll do a video on it. I do need to do a video on evidence and truth and all that, and knowledge. But all right, we are nearing the end of this, so kind of gone over, but I really appreciate you guys hanging in there and watching. Always a pleasure to have you guys here. And, you say here, Michael Shermer's book, Why People Believe Weird Things, is a great book. Awesome. Got that in at the 11th hour, man. See, look at this. Right before I was going to shut it off. But I'll have to go take a look at that. I probably can really find common ground with a lot of stuff he says. And it's just super interesting, the way people believe weird things. So, guys, it's been a pleasure. I won't be here on Wednesday for my normal hour or the next Wednesday, but I will be back the week of the 25th and 26th. 25th is on Sunday, 26th on Monday, as far as I remember. So I'll be in the Baltics. So bon voyage, wish me luck, and I will see you guys then. So, all right.